You mean you don't have voter ID in California?
Yeah, California does not have voter ID. You don't need to present it to register. You don't need to present it to vote. As a matter of fact, the state passed a law forbidding voter ID.
Does everyone see how, wait, I gotta sit up. Okay. Does everyone see how the American people overwhelmingly said they want to have the SAVE Act passed? We want voter ID, black, white, other, everyone else. We want, as Americans, we want voter ID. We want election integrity. And the Democratic Party said, no.
Yeah, so to any Republicans that think that all these TSA lines being horrible and the government not being funded is Democrats' fault, here's your boy admitting that it's him telling the Republicans to keep the government shut down, TSA not funded, so that the airports and air travel is just abysmal. He's doing it on purpose because he wants the unconstitutional SAVE Act passed.
Suggesting strongly to the Republican Party, don't make any deal on anything. The most important thing we can have is what's called the Save America Act. Don't make any deal on anything unless you include voter ID.
It's not going to pass. It's unconstitutional.
So I often hear the
Having
phrase,
been created as a political entity in 1948,
does it have a right
state
to exist? Is that what you're asking?
I don't want to get hung up on the right.
No.
Should it continue to exist? That's how I define narrowly designed.
Because the phrase you used was devised by the Israeli government, of course.
Do you think Donald Trump has betrayed America first?
I think that this war is something that he promised he wouldn't do, not once, but countless times. And until YouTube is banned, we'll be able to prove that.
That the way that those screenshots got to Candace is via Joe Kent. You see, this has never been made public before, Aaron. Right now on your show, this is I'm saying this. So let me explain. Andrew Colvett, who's was Charlie's number 2 guy, who now hosts the show. Andrew was in the chat group as well. He was one of the 9 people in the group. And
whatnot. The central claim, though, that I want to get to was Joe Kent leaking certain information. So Verified's doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I do want to confirm what I can confirm, and that is that, yes, in the immediate aftermath, I did provide the group chat to Joe Kent. We don't throw around accusations recklessly here. We don't. There's a lot of people that do that online. We don't do that. We think that's keeping in the spirit of Charlie's spirit, and the way we choose to do things is we try and be responsible. So, yes, in a spirit of looking at every lead, turning over every stone, we wanted everybody that needed to know anything that we knew. Not just, and by the way, we've been accused of not being interested in the truth.
And just to remind people what this is referring to, this is after Charlie's murder, there were text messages from a private group chat that were made public and were used to, frankly, kick off the big conspiracy theory that we've run into over and over again, which is that Israel or the Jews had Charlie murdered.
Yes. So,
which we do not believe.
But we have been accused of trying to, or we're not interested in the truth. The actual fact of the matter is.
Professor, thank you very much for doing this. We've never met. I don't know a great deal about you, but I have seen a number of your videos in which you make remarkably accurate predictions. So that's what I know about you, and I'm impressed by that, by your ability to call events before they happen. So with that in mind, let me ask you, where do you think this war in Iran is going? How will it be resolved, and what are the consequences likely to be?
So I think that this war in Iran will be very similar to the war in Ukraine, meaning that this will be drawn out, be a war of attrition. Neither side will concede defeat, even though it is in their best interest to reach a ceasefire. And this will have dramatic consequences on the global economy. And this war could drag on for years and years. Already, we're seeing major repercussions on the global economy in that flights are being canceled. In Southeast Asia, they ran out of fuel, so they're asking people to stay at home. And in a few more months, experts are predicting a food shortage, meaning that nations will be forced into food rationing.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. What's going on? Gold hearts in the chat for your girl. Welcome to Monday Night Lights, everybody. I am your host, Keisha King Benton. Hello, hello, hello. How are we doing? Hi, Megan. Hi, Camper Kid, JCL. Stephanie, hello, hello. Tucker is a doof nugget. Definitely that. Oh, and he's been doofing a lot these days. So we have a lot to get to. So, yes, make sure you throw some gold hearts in the chat for your girl. We are going to get started. Oh, my goodness, you guys. Tucker has lost his ever-loving mind. It is fascinating. Y'all know I'm like, what a time to be alive. Like, what a time to actually watch people lose it, like right in front of you. It's truly fascinating. And then the crazier part is that the people who believe them, the people who believe them, the ones who are sucked into the deception, it's unbelievable. And the even more incredible thing about this is most of these people call themselves Christians. That's what's disturbing, because we know what the Democrats do. You know, we know what the left does. They're not faith oriented. They don't think about faith. They don't talk about faith. They pretty much try to do everything that is against faith. So, you know, we know what to expect from that. Hi, Karen. Hello. Hey, we watch. How are you? Good to see you. And Karen. Sorry, I'm pulling up this show so I can make sure I put some gold hearts in the chat too. It's easier for me to do it on the phone. You know, gold hearts in the chat. Yes, so you guys, please share this video out. Hit the like button. Please do hit the like button. Share this video. Subscribe if you have not subscribed. And if you want to support the channel, you can support me by Cash App, buymeacoffee.com/Keisha King Benton, and of course, super chats and super stickers. So please, if you want to support, please do, because, you know, we try hard over here to bring you news, faith, culture, politics, and uncovering the deception, discerning truth, you know, from a biblical worldview, so we don't ourselves get caught up. So yes, we are talking about the news, but we talk about it from a bit different perspective than most on the internet. So I think you're gonna get a lot from our show over here. Let's see. Let me just share this really quick. Live now. Join us. All right. Okay. So, first things first. I have to first let me say, we have a guest tonight. Excuse me, where are my manners? We have a guest tonight. Mr. Teach 'em Chuck Littleton will be joining us shortly. We're going to go through the news. We're going to be talking about Chuck Norris. Yes, we're going to talk about Chuck Norris. He has gone on to be with the Lord. And I was like, I have to talk about this because our guest, Chuck Littleton, if I'm not mistaken, I believe he is a fan of Chuck Norris. So I wanted to make sure. Yes. Yes, I have been reading your comments. Y'all love Chuck. So I'm like, yes, we'll bring him back. Unfortunately, this Chuck listen, it's not really unfortunate because he is with the Lord. If I understand correctly, he was a man of faith, of Christian faith. And so we know to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And I'm pretty sure he ain't thinking about any of us down here. Okay. Right. So, but the big news is Karen, you watch Chuck Norris shows. You know, I wasn't really a big fan, not necessarily a big fan. I didn't feel, either way about Chuck Norris, but we watch. You guys are so funny. He's currently playing sparring games with David. Okay. Could you imagine? That is so cool. And probably so. But oh man, I didn't watch his shows, but from what I've seen of him over the years, he sounds like he really touched a lot of people, and truly, definitely like that Hulk Hogan American hero, same kind of vibe. And so I just think that I love to see when people when they're like, they have a lot of respect, when somebody has gone on, and it's not fake. You can genuinely say like, oh yeah, we're gonna miss him, but as believers, we know that he is not thinking about us. Tucker Carlson, he is all over the place. All over the place. And listen, you will be banned. We don't play that. So watch your mouth in the chat, okay? Watch your mouth. All right. So you will be blocked. Okay, anyway, so Tucker is all over the place. He has finally admitted he took Ben Shapiro's advice. Remember when Ben Shapiro, during the Turning Point AmFest annual end of year event, Ben Shapiro was like, Tucker, just say it with your whole chest. Just say that you don't rock with Trump. And for months, he wouldn't. But now, he's saying it. And he's saying it loud and clear. So we're going to get into all that. I want to play that closer to when Chuck comes on, because I want him to watch these with us and get his reaction, because a lot of the things that Tucker has been saying have to deal with, history and, biblical facts and, just things like that. And so I want us to discuss that with Chuck. So, but what else is in the news is the SAVE Act. Baby, listen, they can't get it together. The left is falling apart. First, it really wasn't about voter ID. It's really about citizenship. Okay, yeah, but it's still about voter ID, essentially. But they're trying to act like, they're clutching pearls, and they act like they don't know, they're trying to blame, of course, everything on Trump. And it's like, if you know that this is what the American people want, why don't you just do what the American people want? They don't want to do that. But just to show you how out of touch, even though Americans want voter ID, I think a lot of Americans are misinformed about what is really happening with voter ID in states. And let's watch Stephen A. Smith get hit with the facts about what is going on in different states around the country.
You don't have voter ID in California.
Yeah, California does not have voter ID. Present it to register. You don't need to present it to vote. As a matter of fact, the state passed a law forbidding voter ID. So cities, counties, if they want
forbidding
ID, they're not allowed to under state law.
What? Right there, the state of California. That's what the Republicans going to lean on as an excuse to definitely push forth the SAVE Act. Right there. Right there. I can't believe it.
I wonder how many Americans know that. Clearly, your rally goers know it.
Send that clip everywhere, as we have exposed not only from that clip from California, but from vouching to Minnesota. The Save America Act is country-saving legislation, and we, the American people, are not going to stop until that is on President Trump's desk to be signed into law. So Senate Majority Leader Thune, I'm going to be here in Rapid City, Sioux Falls tomorrow, but we, the people, are thankful for you advancing this bill. It's time to push through the talking filibuster. Let's get this done.
Yeah, so Stephen A. Smith didn't even know that California not only didn't have voter ID, but they voted against voter ID. So the whole notion that, oh, we really want voter ID, we just don't want it in the bill like y'all have it, is a lie. It is a lie. Tell everybody you know that it is a lie. It is so much of a lie. Now, you know, when the Democrats start doing this kind of stuff that I'm about to show you right here, you know they're terrified. Here they go.
Just stepped off of the floor of the United States Senate. I'm here literally all weekend in Washington, D.C., fighting this voter suppression bill that Republicans are trying to shove down the throats of the American people. Be very clear.
Wait. Over 80% of Americans, between 75 and 5% of all Americans, Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, red, yellow, green, blue, purple, white, black, want voter ID. Of course we want voter ID. We're not stupid like these people. We're not stupid like the politicians. Of course we want voter ID. Yes, we want you to be a citizen. Of course we do. We're not idiots. I mean, why don't you want voter ID, Raphael? Pastor? Why wouldn't you want voter ID? Oh, you want to blame it on, it's the suppression. He said they're shoving it down the throats of Americans when over 80% of Americans want it. Explain to me exactly the shoving that's going on. When we want something, that's not force. We want it. See, you gotta take these people back to like kindergarten, because they don't seem to understand what want is and what we don't want. Now, we didn't want millions of illegal aliens flooding in our country, but see, y'all thought that you're still thinking that you don't care what we want. Clearly you don't, because we didn't want the illegal aliens and you brought them. We want the voter ID, but you won't sign that. So we know you don't give two flips about what we want. So why do you want it? Maybe that's the question. Why don't you want it, Raphael?
This is not a voter ID bill. This is a voter suppression bill. Here's the deal. Republicans know that their agenda is failing and that the American people are not buying what they are selling. They are spiking inflation. They are raising the costs of health care. And they are literally creating violence all across the streets of America under the color of law. And rather than change their policies, they are trying to change the entire way in which Americans register to vote. Some say, shouldn't you use ID in order to vote? Yes, I think you should have to identify who you are in order to vote. But here's the thing. In almost every state, you will not be able to use your driver's license to register, or let's say you move or change your name in order to re-register. I will be on the floor of the Senate for as long as it takes.
This is such a lot. Like, I don't understand people who actually believe this foolishness. Like, they are really up here like, no, you're not going to be able to vote because you're a woman because you got married. Like, since when can't we prove our citizenship to get jobs, to get driver's license now? Like, when you go, most states now, when you go to renew your license, you gotta get your birth certificate because they want to know who's a citizen. Like, this is not, I don't even understand how this is a valid argument. Again, it's not like the lie wouldn't have anywhere to go if the people didn't believe it. It's like, wow, I cannot even believe that people actually believe it. You know that people are believing because they keep on talking about it. They keep on talking about it. So, it's insane. I wanted to show you people that are, actually pushing back, regular citizens. This young lady here.
Does everyone see how, wait, I gotta sit up. Okay. Does everyone see how the American people overwhelmingly said they want to have the SAVE Act passed? We want voter ID, black, white, other, everyone else. We want, as Americans, we want voter ID. We want election integrity. And the Democratic Party said, no.
Basically.
Who do these people work for? This is a perfect example. And this is not about being partisan. It's the facts, the voting record. I think it passed with like 218 to 213, with Republicans overwhelmingly saying, okay, Americans want voter ID. We agree. We should have voter ID to make sure everyone's comfortable, make sure we have election integrity, and only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections. The Democrats said, we don't care that the American people said they want voter ID because we are going to get out there and say that it's bringing back Jim Crow and that black people and married women are not going to be able to vote, even though those same people said they want the SAVE Act to pass. They said, no, voted against it. Overwhelmingly. Are people paying attention? No. Regardless of where you sit, I keep highlighting this. You're saying you want voter ID and they said no. So they're calling the shot. So is it still we the people?
Okay.
If the Democratic Party does whatever they want to do? Look at how many of them have gotten voted in. They promised it. Look at Virginia. They voted Abigail Spanberger in. Go and look at all the laws she passed immediately, all the things she reversed. It is diabolical. It is alarming, frightening, horrific. Tax on tax on tax on tax. She doesn't care because you guys just didn't bother to look at her voting record. Go and look. And so back to the SAVE Act. Once again, the bill goes to the House and the American people say they want something and the Democratic Party said no.
They said no. It's insane. Logic and reason said, we already have voter ID in Texas and Georgia. So what's your point? Well, maybe, I don't know if you know this, logic and reason, but not all 50 states have voter ID. So we want to have federal voter ID to make sure that only American citizens are voting in federal elections. Y'all, listen, even the states that don't have it and don't care what the American people think, you will still get to have your local and state elections voting for anybody you want. Does that make you feel better? Or anybody you want can vote. It is insane. This churns my stomach. Okay, so Tucker Carlson is absolutely crazy. All right. And this will be what we'll be spending the rest of the show on. But I did want to remind you guys to please go and vote or call, vote, but call your senators. Call your senators and say, y'all need to pass this bill. Yes, because the Constitution says elections are done by the states. The elections are still going to be done by the states. We're just saying that you have to register to vote. You got to be a citizen. Logic and reason. To register to vote, The states will still control the voter rolls. They will still count the votes. They will still be in charge of votes. It's just saying to register to vote, you have to show that you are a citizen. Not when you go there, but to vote, but before you register. You have 4 years in between federal elections to do this. Okay? So if you can't figure out, you don't have the money, you don't know how, you haven't tried to figure out how to get your ID in 4 years to the proper identification needed to register to vote, then maybe you shouldn't be voting. Maybe you're not that interested. Cool. Sit it out. You don't have to vote. Like, nobody's making you vote. We're just saying if you do vote, you have to be an American citizen. I don't understand why that's a problem. Maybe you aren't smart enough. Which case you definitely shouldn't be voting. I'm just saying, if you can't figure out how to get your citizen to prove that you're an American citizen, maybe you should not be voting. Maybe you're just not there yet. You need a little bit more time. I mean, we know our public schooling system. Okay, so it is very possible that people really don't know how to figure out to get their citizenship. I mean, it's possible. It is possible with these people, excuse me. All right. Okay. Like I said, Tucker has been all over the place. He had this man on his show by the name of Professor, and I put it in all quotes. I put it in quotes because he's not really a professor. But he dubbed him a political prophet. He's a political prophet. Oh, this dude is a political prophet. Now, before I play this for y'all, I have to tell you, this man here, Professor, let me see if I can pronounce his name properly. Jing Kui. Listen, it's Jiang. Okay, I'm gonna just spell it because I don't know how to say it. I speak American, okay? I speak American, and yeah. Okay, so just a little background, because I was like, who is this guy? Just did a little chat GPT, So it says Zhang is a Chinese Canadian educator born in 1976 in China. He moved to Canada young, grew up modestly, and earned a BA in English literature from Yale College in 1999. Is that Yale University? Or is that another Yale? Like, I'm sorry, I'm not even trying to be funny. Is Yale College or Yale University the same? I don't know. No, he does not have any advanced history degree, no PhD, no tenured university professorship. He spent most of his career in Chinese high schools, roles like deputy principal at places like Shenzhen Middle School, program director at Peking University, high schools, international division. So it's Peking University High School, okay? He's, let's see. He's now teaching Western philosophy and history at Moonshot Academy. Moonshot Academy, a private high school in Beijing. Moonshot Academy at a private high school, the prophet, the political prophet, professor is at Moonshot High School in Beijing, okay? He's not trained. He's not a trained historian in the traditional academic sense, which, okay, all right. You know, not all experts have degrees. Okay, so maybe he's got experience. Maybe he's ever been there. Maybe he's been to all over the world. His degree is in English Lit, and his classroom experience is with high schoolers, not peer-reviewed scholarship or university-level historical research. He doesn't publish in academic journals as a historian. He teaches philosophy surveys and runs a YouTube channel styled like grand lectures. Where did I leave off? Okay, let me see what else. What else catches my eye about this Jing? Let's see. Critics say that calling him a professor is a stretch. It's more branding than an earned title. One outlet called it a fiction of accumulation. Accumulation. I can't even speak. Okay, so he's living and teaching in Beijing under the CCP, which is not neutral, which makes me think that why the ham sandwich is Tucker all like, oh yeah, listening to this guy as if he's coming from a lens that is even comparable to what we believe in the West. Okay, so his quote secret history, this is a series venture that he does. He goes into grand metaphysical claims about evil, consciousness, and ancient patterns. Okay. Let's see. He loves it. Let's see. What else? Yeah, I would not call him a reliable historian. So I don't even know what Tucker is trying to do with this man. But listen to their solution to America's, to the West's problems. Listen to what these fools say.
So what I would do is basically sit down everyone, okay, including Russia, China, Iran, and say, it's time for a new world order where we are partners in this relationship, right? Before America was the hegemon, before the US dollar was the world reserve currency. But now what we want to do is open a dialogue where everyone is respected, where America is no longer the bully, but a willing partner in creating a new economic order that benefits everyone and not just a few.
I'm sorry. Is that communism? Are you trying to sell me communism? Where everybody just collectively comes together and we share in our production and stuff? Is that what you're trying to sell me, sir? Mr. CCP? I know you ain't trying to do that.
I think that's the wisest possible advice and probably the only path that preserves civilization. But they're the one country standing in.
Wait. This is the wisest path and the only one that would preserve civilization. Well, I be doggone. Like, let's not look to the Bible. I'm a Christian, Tucker Carlson. Let's not look to the Bible and see what God has to say about how we sustain our wealth, because it's in there. It's in there, how we get wealth, how we keep wealth, what we do with it, how we bless others. Oh, it's all in there. God didn't leave anything out. He didn't. He really didn't. He didn't. So what this guy is saying, because it doesn't line up with the word of God, we know it's a lie. But we'll let him. Let me run it back just a sec, a smidget.
wisest possible advice and probably the only path that preserves civilization. But the one country standing in the way of that is Israel.
Of course. Why didn't I think of that? The one country that is standing in the way of all of our problems. Silly me. It's Israel. Of course. Why didn't I figure that out? Y'all, why didn't we figure that out? Well, I didn't figure it out, but I have somebody who might know how to figure that out, and that is Mr. Chuck Littleton. He goes by Teach Him Chuck. So maybe he can help us understand where Tucker and Gene, whatever his last name is, the political prophet, maybe he can help us understand where they're coming from. Since, they're just, so is the wisest, only path to saving civilization, Chuck. What's up?
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Did you know that coming together with all of that America should just come together with the rest of the world, and we just kind of like pull back, not be so much of a bully, and just share our wealth and resources and everything with everybody else, so we don't leave anybody out and everybody gets a fair share piece of the pie. That's wise and correct, according to Tucker and this dude. What say you?
Man, I don't even know what to say.
Oh, there's more. There's more.
Yeah, this guy, when you said his name, and of course I immediately, it dawned on me. I said, okay, well, obviously the guy's Chinese, and I don't mean to. By the way, I had a Chinese professor when I was in college, and he taught Western literature, but he's actually a good professor. He was actually a good professor. We actually, stuck to the topic. There was no attempt at trying to infer where the artist was trying to impose, bourgeois values on the unsuspecting. So, there was no, I guess, critical breakdown or critical analysis to the subject material.
He wasn't deconstructing America.
Yeah, he wasn't deconstructing the West with, this bogus, Marxian literary analysis. We actually just stuck to the subject matter, and he was Chinese, but yeah. But when you said his name, I was unaware of this video. It seems like Tucker makes a fool out of himself every day.
Mm-hmm.
It comes so fast and furious, it's hard to keep up. But I was unaware of this particular interview, so I'm hearing it for the first time as you walk through it. But I can't prove this, but the guy clearly, he seems to be, he's clearly a front man for the regime, and Tucker, of course, is more than willing to give this guy a platform to spew his bile and his misinformation. Like I said before, I don't care to know or care to explain Tucker Carlson's about face. Doesn't matter to me. I don't know how I would even, me personally, how I would even go about the business of knowing the truth behind Tucker Carlson's switch or change. But or should I say, with that being said, Tucker Carlson is it's hard to find a word that adequately describes how much of a lowlife I think he is. And it's wow. I really don't know what to say. If you want to keep playing the clip and we go into it some more.
Well, I want to just a particular part that he's talking about this, this collective. Yeah, I really I think we need to dig into that a little bit.
So
okay, yeah.
because I want people, I don't, because it kind of happens so fast that I think people might just kind of run right over what they're really saying. But listen to what he's agreeing with, considering this is the guy that is telling everybody, oh, the West is, I'm American, the West is so great. But this is his prescription to the problems that we have. This so-called conservative, Republican, whatever you want to say, this is what he believes. Let's listen.
What I would do is basically sit down everyone, okay, including Russia, China, Iran, and say, it's time for a new world order where we are partners in this relationship, right? Before America was the hegemon, before the US dollar was the world reserve currency. But now what we want to do is open a dialogue where everyone is respected, where America is no longer the bully, but a willing partner in creating a new economic order that benefits everyone and not just a few.
I think that's the wisest possible advice and probably the only path that preserves civilization.
That is what blew my mind. I could not believe he said that.
I mean, we've been charting this course for a very long time. This is why we're in the precarious position that we're in the world over today, because the West, and not just the United States, but the West as a whole, but particularly the United States, have continued to recede and to fall into the background. This project, I don't know where this so-called professor has been over the last 80 years, but
did you hear me run down his resume?
Yeah, I heard you run down his resume.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
He's currently, you can find him at Roscoe's Chicken and Waffles or Moon Shoot. Hold on, let me get it right. Oh, let me get it exactly correct. That would be where is it? Moonshot Academy. There we go. The high school, private high school, a private high school, mind you. From the guy, he works at a private high school, y'all, which means it's separate from the government, but yet he wants all of America to not be private.
Right.
It's just like a leftist.
Yeah, it's just like a leftist, and it's more. I mean, he's peddling in that the petty post-colonial theory BS. But like I said, I don't know where this guy has been over the past 80 years, but we're currently in the midst of that project. And he talks about the United States and China and whatnot. China and Russia, or then the Soviet Union, were all part of the UN Security Council during its inception. And so we've tried. We're in the midst of that project. What many others also refer to. I myself refer to it as this, and others refer to it as this as well, which is the neoliberal world order. Because see, here's the fascinating thing, and then this will probably, we might not be there yet, but we'll get there. This is going to bring us to certain aspects of Islam. And that is, people throw around this term globalism, for example, but they don't necessarily understand that globalism isn't necessarily an ideology in and of itself. It is a byproduct or a characteristic of a larger theory, right? Globalism is just a feature of an overarching ideology, and that ideology is what comes to define what that global structure is going to look like. And so in the beginning of the 20th century, like I said, you had these three different ideologies all coming to a head, and that's what actually the Second World War and the First World War and the Second World War epitomized this clash of global perspectives, right? You had the liberalism of the West, you had the fascists and Nazis in Europe, and then you had the communists in Russia, and that all three of those particular ideologies are globalist, quote unquote, in their orientations and in their perspectives. And so a lot of people don't really understand what that means. And we thought that we had defeated fascism, and perhaps we still. I mean, it's still fair to say that fascism is lying on the dustbin of history, as the saying goes. But maybe not. Communism certainly has not. But Islam most certainly has not, because Islam is another global ideology. I've heard people, recently make a comment, or I've heard people make comments about globalism, and certain group of people the world over, right, being responsible for the spread of globalism, right? We're talking Jews, right? But the reality is that Islam is another, like I said, a political, is a theopolitical movement that seeks global supremacy. And it is part of their religious doctrine. And so I just thought I'd put that out there at this moment. But yes, this I don't, like I said, I don't know where this professor has been over the last 80 years. The United States has tried that. Our Western allies have tried that. And now, as instead of taking our, to try to, I guess, establish some new modus vivendi, instead of taking our, I guess, kindness as a gesture of goodwill, they see it as weakness to be exploited. And this is why we are currently being pushed to the brink as we speak. And so so this guy here, he's clearly not a good faith actor. He is certainly a propagandist for the communist regime in Peking. No doubt about it.
Seriously. And it makes me think, like, they have he had the nerve to say in this interview that China, we pretty much mind our own business. Like, we don't get involved in like military stuff, and we don't do. I'm like, all them spy balloons y'all was flying over here just a few 2-3 minutes ago, all of these professors and stuff, who are getting arrested at these universities for being spies. Like, I'm like, yo, what exactly? Where have you been, sir? We ain't even, not even 80 years. Where you been for the last 4 years? Where you been? Because there's plenty of stuff that the Chinese government has gotten into. This guy is full of it. Exactly, Stephanie. It's full of it. Full of it. This is insane. And the fact that Tucker is supposed to be this respected journalist who would bring somebody on like this, he just continues to show us. It's like, here's the middle finger to all of you. That's how I see it. Like, he's just like, yeah, double him up. So he also
those lies and didn't say a word to, it's just, it's sick.
It is. And so of course he had to blame Israel for everything. And he did another interview. Like I said, he's been all over. He was on The Economist, and he sat down with their editor-in-chief, and this is one of the clips that came out.
You are critical of the government of Israel. Do you believe in Israel's right to exist? Would you consider yourself a Zionist in that narrow definition?
What does that mean, a right to exist?
The existence of the political state of Israel as
but
it has
existed. But it has a right. What does that mean?
That you think it should continue in its existence as a state right now. So you do not agree with Iran, for example.
Well, let me just ask, since you asked me the question, it's fair for me to get you to define the term so I can answer it. You've asked two questions. The first was, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? And the second question was, do you believe Israel should continue to go on as a nation state? And those are very different questions. So I often hear the phrase... Having
been created as a political entity in 1948...
Does it have a right to exist? Is that what you're asking?
I don't want to get hung up on the right. Should it continue to exist? That's how I define narrowly Zionism.
Because the phrase you used was devised by the Israeli government. Of course, does it have a right to exist? And so my question to you.
Okay, Mr. Teach 'em Chuck, I need you to respond to that, because we've talked a lot about Israel's their modern political state, 1948. That's what everybody's talking about. They can't stop talking about it. And so he says that they're the ones that came up with this, created this whole narrative. So help us make sense of this.
Okay. Oh man, he just can't say it. I mean, what does Tucker Carlson want to do? Does he want to go back in time? I mean, Charlie Kirk apparently is a time traveler. Maybe Charlie Kirk can go back in time and I don't know, rescind the Balfour Declaration, or change the past so that the UN never passed its resolution 181, I believe was the number. You all can go and read UN resolution 181. Like I say, Israel came into existence by way of a international consensus. Of course, after the end of World War II, it was, I think it was, what's the French? Anyway, but it ended up, of course, in the hands of the British, and kind of like remained a kind of a British protectorate for about 20, 25 years. And then, of course, the UN finally voted on Resolution 181. But again, to go back a bit, because of course there have been countless countries that have come into existence after, right, 1948. Many people. I mean, a ton of countries. No one seems to have a problem with those countries, particularly Pakistan. Right, particularly Pakistan. People love like to bring that up, because of course India for the longest time was racked with all sorts of upheavals because of the ethnic and religious tensions in India. And of course, we saw civil war in Libya that happened after the Iranian Revolution that lasted about 15 years. I mean, we can go on and on and on, right? But he says that does the Jews have a right to exist? I'll be remiss. I think it's important that we bring this up, because when you talk about the Jews, right? I mean, there are three major historical events that mark a kind of, or quite literally, an expulsion from their original land, and that being the Egyptian captivity. You have that, and then you had later on the Babylonian captivity, and then you had in the first century AD. Well, no, that was second century, early second century AD. You had the Simon Bakopa revolt, which led to Emperor Hadrian, of course, vanquishing Jews from the Holy Land for the final time. And, they were scattered. And many Jews, of course, went to different parts of the Middle East. Some Jews stayed behind. A lot of Jews went to Europe. Okay, at this time when Emperor Hadrian banned the Jews from the Holy Land after they rebelled against the Roman Empire due to the attempt by way of the Roman authorities at the time to further Hellenize, if you will, the Jewish people, to force them to assimilate to Greco-Roman traditions, languages. I mean, they spoke, the language, Greek, Latin, such and so forth. But there was really like this intrusion into a Jewish life by way of the Roman authorities. And Again, that caused a lot of friction and tension, but that's a long story, right? But once the Jews leave that particular area, and of course, Emperor Hadrian, of course, renames the land Philistia, right, after the Jews' biblical enemies, the Philistines, so as to sort of mark the land as a place where they were not wanted. And so this time, when all of this is happening, Keisha, we have to bear in mind that there is no Islam. Okay, Islam doesn't come about until 6 centuries later, until the 7th
Right.
century. There is no Islam, or 5 centuries later.
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, Islam was the last quote, like holy book, I think, to come around. That's
well, that's
of the
they,
Abrahamic, I guess, religions, we'll say.
well, they call it that. They call it
Mhm.
that. But I think that it would behoove us to, and I myself have done that in the past, just for the sake of argument, or for the sake of trying to prove make a point, because I don't want to camp out on the issue of the Abrahamic religions. But Islam is not one of the Abrahamic religions. There are only two.
Right. No,
Judaism
I
and
know, but
Christianity.
they say it like that. Yeah.
They claim that, and like I said, Christians, we will give that, that kind of rhetorical olive branch to
Yeah.
Islam. Say, hey, we're all kind of part of this Abrahamic family. But
Mhm.
Islam is not it's not an Abrahamic religion. It's completely made up.
It
And
is. And they don't even believe in any of they say they do, but their
they don't.
scriptures really don't
The
scriptures. They
scriptures,
don't say that.
more importantly, they get a lot of things wrong in terms
Right.
of who is who and what is
Mhm.
what.
Yeah.
One of the glaring errors in the Quran that I haven't heard a single Muslim apologist, a Muslim scholar, cleric, etc., theologian, etc., properly explain, at least for my intellectual standard, will be the error the Quran makes when they identify the mother of Jesus as being the sister of Moses. Because, of course, the
And I
Hebrews.
never now you're right. Now I have watched a lot of Islam apologetics lately, and I have not heard that one. I honestly thought you were going to say something that I had heard. I have not heard that one.
Well, yeah, and the excuse that they give, because of course Moses' sister was what's
Miriam?
Miriam, Miriam,
Yeah, Miriam.
Miriam,
Mhm.
and the I guess the Hebrew pronunciation for Mary is Mariam, and so it's
Okay.
Mariam.
Mhm.
So, and when the scribes, or whatever you want to call them, when they were forging this document,
Mhm.
forging their holy books, because the peoples of Arabia, beginning with Muhammad, they had only heard fragments of the story. They had
Mhm.
heard about the Jewish story, and they were small Jewish tribes and Jewish clans that had made their way to Arabia.
Yeah.
So Muhammad had heard about the story, but he didn't quite know it in its entirety. This is why, of course, you and I, Keisha, have spoken privately over the phone, and then you'll hear like our friend, I'll say his friend like I know him and have spoken to him. I haven't, but
Yeah.
people like David Wood and there are
Yeah.
other popular Christian apologists
God
online,
logic. Yeah.
God logic, and they talk about the quote unquote Islamic dilemma. Of course, when
Yes.
of course, Allah instructs his followers to, if you get confused or if you get lost and you don't know
Uh-huh.
something, go and ask the peoples who
Of the
know
book.
of the book. Go and ask the peoples
Mhm.
of the Torah and the peoples of the gospel. That's what he says.
That's right.
Okay. So anyway, so we'll get to that, because you have to understand why Muhammad did what he did, and ultimately what Muhammad's long-term goals and ambitions were, and why it was so important for him to create the Ummah, the Arabian family, in in his homeland. What was he doing? What was he trying to do? And what was he ultimately up to? This is a very important question. And I think a part of getting to the bottom of what Muhammad was actually up to, I think it begs the, I think it's important for us to know at least a small, at least a smidget of what pre-Islamic Arabia was like. And that's a very interesting question because, not many people talk about what pre-Islamic Arabia was like, because in the back and forth, as we talked about, you and I, Keisha, a couple of weeks ago, between the Romans and the Persians, even when Persia was at its height. I mean, Persia encompassed Afghanistan, parts of Pakistan, parts of Turkey, parts of Iraq, parts of Egypt. I mean, Persia was massive, but
Yeah.
I haven't read any historical count or read the work of any scholar or historian that has made the claim that Persia had ever reached Arabia. Okay, it's very interesting because Arabia, for the longest time, had not been touched by empire, and that's an important thing to consider, because you had peoples, Muhammad being one of them, but there were others that predated him that had long-term goals of becoming Arabia's first emperor. And that's when the story of Islam comes
Really?
into being. Yeah, because they wanted to
That is
be,
crazy.
they wanted to be like the others. But in order to
Mm.
do so, they had to break the peoples of Arabia of their clannish feudal ways, if you will. They had to,
Mhm.
in a sense, like I said, sophisticate. They had to get them beyond that. And how would a ruler validate or substantiate his headship when a person's
Back then,
entire,
especially.
yeah, because back then, especially, a person's entire orientation or how they view reality is based upon the stories that they tell themselves about their gods.
Yep.
Because, of course, the peoples of Arabia were a polytheistic people. And in fact, the god Allah existed in Arabia long before there was a Quran.
Come on. We haven't talked about that, but I knew that. Wait, no, I did. I think I did talk about it a little bit before, but that is so true. There was a group of gods, little g gods, that he belonged to. They just kind of like extracted Allah out,
We'll talk about
and
it.
but he became like kind of a mix of these other deities. Y'all, it is deep. The enemy is, ooh, baby, let me tell you.
So
And here's the thing that is just really crazy to me, and I think Megan said it. The Quran is so ignorant. It is, y'all. When I started to realize the stuff that is in this book, I was like, "There's no way that people read it. There is no way that they are reading this book, and they are not allowed to read the book. They have to. You have to, like, the proper way to do it is what you have to read it in Arabic and speak the Arabic, and then you probably can't even do that. You have to go to the imam for them to tell you what it says. Anyway, it is like, I'm like, I can't believe some of the stuff that is in the Quran, y'all. When we say it's remedial, it's bad. And they don't even, like Chuck said, they don't even get basic historical events right. Like, why is this book even a thing? Like, it should have been like one of those, it should have been worse than Enoch. At least the book of Enoch has like accurate stories in there. This is, anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Let me go back. Sorry, Keisha, I got sidetracked because I want to talk about, I left off. We got sidetracked talking about whether
Sorry.
Islam belongs should be considered one of the Abrahamic religions, because again, Jews and Christians argue from within the story. Muslims created a totally separate God whose nature is unlike the nature of the God of Jews and Christians. He's a totally separate God who believes in totally separate things, who does totally different things.
Oh yes.
Whose long-term goals is not, or whose long-term goal is not restoration and reconciliation and redemption, but whose long-term goal is punishment, death, and destruction. These are totally different entities. But to go
Yes.
back to the story of Jews after the failed Bar Kokhba revolt, like I said, the Jews settled in parts of the Middle East, and many of them, of course, went to Russia, Europe. You know, they went all over.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, and you know, it's just I think the destruction or the conquering of Alexandria by the Muslims, I think, pretty much marked the well, yeah, that sort of like that was sort of like the beginning of the end, when Europe would fall into what some historians refer to as the Dark Ages, or what we would call the Middle Ages.
Mm.
It was really Islamic expansion that precipitated the Dark Ages. And this, you know, because there was this huge Islamic blockade that cut off Europe from its Christian brethren to the east. All the while, the true treasures of Western civilization were kept under lock and, well, not so much lock and key, but it was safeguarded politically by the Byzantine Empire. And this is why it took so long for the Muslims to finally capture Constantinople, which they didn't do until
Mm.
eventually 1452. But during this entire time, where, you know, Europe was living in the Dark Ages, the bright shining city civilization on the hill was Constantinople. Okay.
Yeah.
But during this time, I say all of that to say that during this time, of course, the church was the central character, the central figure in what defined European civilization. Okay, it was the
Mm-hmm.
church.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, okay, you know, during this time, particularly during the days of the early church, Jews were under immense persecution by Christian majority countries, right? Many Christian
Mm-hmm.
majority countries that were, of course, Roman, right? Roman
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, referred to as Catholicism. If you read some of Martin Luther's early critiques of Catholicism, Martin Luther was especially displeased at that time for how the Catholic Church treated Jews.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you know, Martin Luther his views on Jews would radically change. A lot of people chalk that up to Martin Luther. Uh, his mental faculties began to decline, and Martin Luther, virtually toward the end of his life, sort of began to he began to go crazy. It just, you
Mm-hmm.
know, just to put it in a colloquial sense, he began to go crazy. Okay, a lot of people are familiar with Martin Luther's infamous pamphlets that was published into a book. You can still get a hold of the book titled "The Jews and Their Lies." And it's funny too because
This is, I don't know. I'm not like really big into not that I don't appreciate them, the church fathers. I've never been the person to just read a lot of their stuff, but I did hear recently, like, he was kind of saying this whole Jew stuff, Jews are bad and all that stuff, and they're the cause for evil and stuff like that. But so this happened later on in his life. This wasn't like people are pretty much thinking that this came with like dementia, like losing his mind, basically,
yeah,
not something that
yeah.
he actually believed.
Yeah. Some
Okay.
people do believe that. I'm not an expert on the life of Martin Luther, but yes, Martin Luther was, because he did have this switch, this change, this about face,
Mhm.
and he died very I mean he suffered toward the end of his life, and like I said, a lot of
Mm.
people blame the loss of his mental fact. Forgot what he had or what they called it back then. I forgot. Anyway, don't get me to try and guess what many
Mm.
modern historians believe that he had. But nevertheless, it's interesting because the Nazis, while they were engaging in, of course, their campaign of racial purification, they would use the writings and the ideas of the late Martin Luther, or the the Martin Luther of old, they would use Martin Luther's ideas and writings and teachings or whatever to promote their propaganda. This is why a lot of people claim that, well, not the Nazis and Hitler, when people make the claim that, well, Christianity is responsible for genocides and deaths and these things because, Hitler. And so the Nazis get this painted, but it was just a means to an end because, of course, they were on their racial purification campaign.
Yeah.
And of course, the race, as it were, formed their meta narrative for them, and the state essentially became the god of the German people, even though they had a Christian, of course, memory of, because it had been a Christian country that had collectively, society sort of collectively lost its mind for a brief period of time. But during this time, when the Jews are in Europe in particular, and this was key, they wanted to, a lot of people did it so as to avoid persecution. Others had genuine spiritual conversions, Jews that is. And a lot of them saw conversion to Christianity as a pathway to acceptance by the wider society.
Right. Yes.
They were urged, okay, do away with the old, accept the new faith, and these peoples will accept you because they wanted to become full French citizens or full German citizens or full French citizens and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I mean, this went on for centuries. It worked in some instances, in some instances it didn't. Of course, for example, when Ferdinand and Isabella finally expelled the Moors from Spain in 1492 and commissioned the campaign to reconquer, or what they commonly refer to as the Reconquista. They went about, the inquisitors, they went about the business of trying to find what they refer to as crypto Jews, meaning Jews who converted to Christianity but weren't really Christians. They may have been Christian in name,
wow,
but they were still Jews. And so, the reason why I'm saying all of this, so please try to walk with me. And so they tried to change their names and tried to convert to Christianity, many of them. There's a famous, some of you have probably heard the name. This name, you got a lot of people speaking about the history of the Jews who don't know anything about the history of the Jews, quite frankly. And it's, like I said, is really disgusting because they don't know anything about them. But anyway, let me stop. Let me stay focused on what I was getting ready to say. So by the 1800s, right around the time, now the Enlightenment is really starting to take hold at this time, right? And what the Enlightenment represented, and it's funny because there is no Jewish Enlightenment thinker who is like within that pantheon of the people that we think about, when we think about the great thinkers of that time. But of course, that there wouldn't have been an Enlightenment without Judaism, right? Because Judaism is the foundational principle upon which the Enlightenment stands. Because what Judaism did, Judaism represented a break or a major development, not just in a sense, but quite literally in the spiritual and philosophical trajectory of Western thought. Because
Yes.
for the first time, it introduced this idea, because, it's funny that the irony is, for all of this, for all of you who are upset about the moniker of the Jews being the chosen people, well, it is Jewish spirituality that popularized the notion that all human beings are what, Keisha? Created in the image of God.
That is
Regardless
correct.
if they're Jewish or not. So what this did was, Keisha, it put into the popular consciousness for the first time this idea of a common dignity. Christianity, this is why I say the character of the God of the character is still the same, right? It's the same God we're talking about, Christians and Jews.
That's
because
right.
when the Jews introduced this idea of common dignity, Christianity would come about later and introduce the idea of common grace. Okay.
Mm.
So what and the Enlightenment did and what the secularization of the West did, it wasn't a betrayal of religious thought. It was a fulfillment of it.
Come on
Now,
now.
and then so what Jews did, many of them, and I'll say people want to ask this question of, why are Jews always at the forefront of so many of these, secularist social justice movements that have caused so much destruction? Well, that is because once they realized that conversion to Christianity was not going to grant them full citizenship and full acceptance by the wider society, they sought the path of secularism because that, in the minds of many Jews, became the new ticket. A famous Jewish theologian and philosopher by the name of Moses Mendelssohn, he was a German Jew. He was a philosopher and a theologian, and he was a leading voice for international Jewry that promoted the idea that Jews ought to behave like those around them. And it's funny because as conservatives, though, that's the type of thing that we would say to a minority population here in the United States that attempts to rebel against the status quo out of some kind of psychological dread or fear of assimilation. And so they create these kind of dysfunctional behavioral patterns as a
Mhm.
means of rebelling against the status quo out of fear, for whatever reason, of assimilation.
Yeah.
That ingrained psychic reflex gets exploited by various experts, or those who are experts in the social sciences and whatnot. And now we have a huge problem on our hands. Well,
Mm.
what Jews attend, and this is why Jews are so prone to these left-wing movements, Keisha, because Jews have played the role since their captivity in Egypt of the perpetual minority. And what secularism did in the 18th century is what it gave them a promise that, okay, now they didn't accept us when we converted to Christianity. Here's our key. Here is the ticket here. We can go the route of secularism.
Mm.
And when that didn't work, what secularism did, in short, was it led them to the gas chambers. That was the final straw, because you had that. Then
Mm.
you had a famous event that we've all familiar with. They made a movie about it. It's known to history as the Dreyfus Affair. This is the conspiracy to frame Alfred Dreyfus. And they did it because, for no other reason than the fact that he was a Jew. Okay. And this, so the story goes, was the impetus for Theodor Herzl
Mm.
to pin his work, The Jewish State, because he said, okay, we tried converting to Christianity, we tried going the secular route and just, promoting these ideas of liberty, just, all the things we know what that all the things that represents. But when
Yeah.
they were still persecuted for being Jewish, and of course, Stalin at the time, the Russians were engaging in various pogroms and what have you as well. Okay, something that I talk about in one of my YouTube videos. A lot of people don't realize that under communist regimes, priests and rabbis were persecuted, imprisoned, tortured, and executed. Not
Yeah.
only were churches destroyed, bombed, or desecrated, many of them turned into museums and warehouses, but they also did the exact same thing to synagogues. And many Jews were at the forefront of this movement because they sought assimilation by the wider society, and there was no better way to prove their loyalty to their new master, so to speak, by turning on their own, by betraying their own,
Mm.
because all they wanted to do was be accepted.
Yeah.
Now, and now, but no matter what they do, what they did, Jews couldn't escape the fact that they were Jewish.
Right.
And so by the time we get to World War II, the horrors of World War II happen, and then that creates the impetus and the sympathy to create a Jewish homeland, Keisha, because
Mm-hmm.
for the longest time, Zionism was a movement going all the way back to the 1800s, but the majority of the world's Jews were not pro-Zionist until the events of World War II. Many of them were happy and content with where they were.
Yeah.
And it was after that, and then the rest is history. The world saw what happened, and people said, okay, well, if this is just going to continue to go on throughout history, but of course, God tells us that the Jews aren't going anywhere, and God's going to make sure of that. So y'all just better get used to hating them, or you
It's a
better, I don't know,
miracle that they're still around. I mean, it is a miracle.
right? And so they said, okay, well, this is what we have to do, because it seems as though no matter what happens, it gets to a point where these kinds of horrors occur, and perhaps the Jews need their own state. And so that's my long-winded way of saying that's how we arrived at that point. And before I let you jump back in, Keisha, you have people, because of the causal relationship between the Holocaust and the creation of the Jewish state. A lot of people are of the belief that, of course, that the Jews collaborated with Hitler so as to dupe the world into accepting the creation of the Jewish state. This is completely bogus, and I don't know if we have time to unpack that.
Whoa.
But in fact, Keisha, it was the KGB and it's the Soviet propagandists that helped popularize that lie, that conspiracy, that it was actually the Jews that were behind the Holocaust the entire time. It was never true. It was the Soviet Union that helped popularize it, and the main mouthpiece speaking on behalf of the Soviet Union that helped to put that idea into the minds of the public was, of course, the infamous Mahmoud Abbas. And we can read of that, Keisha. As a matter of fact, before I let you go, I'll give you guys the name of Mahmoud Abbas's work. And if you don't believe me, you can go and read it for yourself. It's called, what is Mahmoud Abbas's work called? It's called The Other Side, The Secret Relations Between Nazism and the Leadership of the Zionist Movement. And it's hard to get your hands on. As a matter of fact, you may only be able to get your hands on a copy of the abstract. But I'll just read to you here just a brief portion of Mahmoud Abbas. Of course, Mahmoud Abbas was once the former president of Palestine, or the Palestinian Authority. He was president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas.
I thought the name sounded familiar.
Here's what part of what Mahmoud Abbas said in his thesis, his doctoral thesis that he earned in the Soviet Union. It says that with the deepening of the crisis of capitalism, now listen to how he's talking, because remember, Keisha, at this time in the 20th century, the language of jihad is interspersed and intermingled with the language of Marxism, but it's still jihad, but they're saying it in a way that makes it sound different. At the time, what this was commonly referred to as was Pan-Arabism. And Pan-Arabism was something that was green-lit by the Soviet Union dating back to the year 1920. And I'm going to tell you what happened in the year 1920 when the Soviet Union got behind Arab liberation. But here's what Mahmoud Abbas said in his dissertation. With the deepening of the crisis of capitalism in our time, listen, this is funny. With the deepening of the crisis of capitalism in our time, The crisis of the ideology of Zionism and the inadequacy of its ideological concepts become increasingly obvious, right? Mahmoud Abbas goes on to warn that Zionism remains a, quote, a shrewd and dangerous enemy of socialism and the national liberation movements. Unmasking of the reactionary ideology and politics of Zionism constitutes a pressing task of all progressive anti-imperialist forces and is inextricably connected with the defense of peace, democracy, and social progress. All peoples must fight, he says, the hateful ideology and practice of racism, against racial and national discrimination, Zionism, and anti-Semitism, which are fomented by capitalist reactionary forces. President of the PLO, Mahmoud Abbas, saying that Zionism is, well, you just heard it. And of course, Zionism was created by the same evil, dark Jewish forces that were behind the Holocaust of the Jews. So
I am speechless for once in my life. That is, y'all, Chuck does this to me all the freaking time. Because Megan, you just said in the comment, that sounds just like Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I really think he knows what he's doing. Like, this to me just solidified. What year did he write? Like, where are we in history?
At this point, this is
Excuse me.
I'm trying to, I don't have the year right in front of me because
But this is after World. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Now, yeah, this is after he studied. So he was born in Israel, or was born in Palestine in 1935. During the war, he and his family, Mahmoud Abbas, fled to Syria. He earned his law degree from the University of Damascus, where he was involved in student activism through the General Union of Palestinian Students. Right, like I said, the Soviet Union was behind the creation of all of these various left-wing organizations.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he was recruited by Yasser Arafat, and he became a member of Fatah, Fatah is a group within the Palestinian Liberation Organization. Okay, there are a multitude of groups that are within the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and they took these liberationist concepts, i.e., these Marxist-Leninist concepts, and it kind of played into the kind of identitarian politics that communists know that they can use in order to destabilize the rival global ideology, which was liberalism. Communists thought that they can destabilize the liberal world order by turning various minorities against the wider society, right? This is how the Soviet Union played. And so, this idea of identity politics is something that goes back a very, very long time. So this was, I would say, when he wrote this, I don't know, probably just a quick Google search away. I was trying to see if I had it in my notes right in front of me. But
this is like around the Mrs. Graves said, she said he wrote it he wrote the book in 1984.
Okay.
But the time, is that the same time period in which he's talking about?
That was a part. That was his book. His book, what she's talking, it was published. But his dissertation, it was part of his dissertation, and it eventually became a book. But that's how he received his doctorate from the Institute of Oriental Studies, or what some people refer to as the Patrice Lumumba People's Friendship University of Russia. Of course, this is named after another Soviet puppet, the slain Congolese revolutionary Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba is celebrated as a hero in the Soviet Union, and of course, other individuals, Keisha, who attended this same institution where Mahmoud Abbas received his doctorate in Russia, were Daniel Ortega, who eventually became the communist leader of Nicaragua, and Ali Hussein Khamenei, the now former ruler.
No, he's back.
Yeah, he and Mahmoud Abbas, they both went to the same Russian institute to study.
Okay, I have felt the more we've we've talked about communism a bunch, cutting through the culture. My own studies before I met you, Chad, Bland, all you guys. The more I learn about communism, the more I believe that communism is the enemy's political, that's the political instrument, the political mechanism rather, that Satan uses to disperse his ideas. I mean, there is everything about communism is literally opposite of what God believes. Everything, all of the prescriptions that communism gives, they are literally the opposite. I do not know, like, how do you have even freaking Buddhists? They don't even, they are not like everything that they believe is against the Bible. Everything that the communists believe is against the Bible. Everything. I don't know one idea that is compatible with the Bible. Not one. I don't know one. I really do. I know that's like kind of out there, but you can't be that bad like with no, that is the enemy. Steal, kill, and destroy. That is their MO. Every group, every organization that believes what they believe, they all take on the same spirit of steal, kill, and destroy. That's what they do. I mean,
Yeah, Keith, and I just I remember when I read Whitaker Chambers' memoir. Whitaker Chambers was the famous communist defector who he went public, went to the FBI about the information he knew about communist infiltration into the State Department. And of course, that led to a showdown between he and one of his former comrades, Alger Hiss, and it turned into this whole episode in the late 1940s, and it was one of the key events that helped to propel Richard Nixon into the public imagination as this lowly congressman from California, which is part of the reason why the left, because the left always hated Richard Nixon, because the left wanted to destroy Whitaker Chambers. And at the time, Richard Nixon seemed to be the only ally that Whitaker Chambers had, because Richard Nixon was the only person who believed him. This is going back to the late 1940s. But you can read, and of course, Whitaker Chambers turned his back on communism, and he left the Communist Party because he said he could not deny the fact. Interestingly, because it fits right in with the topic. He said he could no longer deny the fact that there was a God, and he said that he said the thing that really just hit him like a ton of bricks. It's an odd story, and he details it in his autobiography. Witness. It's one of the landmarks. It's one of the greatest pieces of literature of the 20th century. I advise anyone who's interested in knowing the history of communism and the mindset to go and read Whitaker Chambers' autobiography. It's a good read. It's a long book, but it's a good read. It's a tough read, but it's a good read. And he said that one day he said that he was with his children, and because he had a wife and children, like a lot of these communists do. It's weird. They don't believe in family, but a lot of them are married. They have children.
I know, it is strange.
and oftentimes their spouses are also fellow revolutionaries, if not indifferent. And he said that he was looked over at his daughter, and perhaps he was already kind of on the fence at that time. And he said that he looked at her ear. He said he glanced at her ear. And he said that, I mean, I don't know what it was about that particular part of the human anatomy, but something just dawned on him. And he said that that's not an accident. Nature didn't make that. And it's just weird. And he said that the complexity of it and the way that, and the uniqueness of it. And he just said that there has to be intelligent design. It can't be by accident that we as human beings, why are we made like this? Why are we built? And he just had this epiphany when he looked at his daughter's ear.
Yeah.
Fascinating story. But anyway, so Whittaker Chamber, he walks through from when he was a kid, and the suicide when his brother killed him, so his brother committed suicide. And I mean, there's just a lot of things that happened in his life, and he talks about what drove him into the arms of the Communist Party. And he's a moment in there where he's talking about what was going on, because he was a communist for well over somewhere around 10 years or so, give or take, throughout the 1930s. And I guess into the 40s. I don't remember the exact time frame. But during this time, of course, Israel was not a state yet, but the issue was still an issue.
It was, but yeah.
So here's what Whittaker Chambers said at the time, when he wrote his book. This is what he's experiencing at the time. And mind you, his book was originally published in 1952. But here's what Whittaker Chambers said in his memoir: a man whose communist bona fides cannot be questioned. Okay, because he was in deep. He said that Arab outrages were occurring in Palestine. The Communist International chose that moment to call for the formation of a Soviet Arabistan and to attack the Zionists. This is going back to the 1930s. This is Whittaker Chambers' memoir. Now, Keisha, I don't know if you're familiar with this particular event. You may want to look at it.
So I'm sorry. This is from the 1930s.
1930, because he's in the party at this point. So what I read there was he was discussing because Whittaker Chambers was a Soviet. He was a part of the Soviet underground apparatus here in the United States. Okay, and so he was connected with all kinds of high-ranking people within the Soviet espionage network in the United States. So when he's telling his story, he's talking about from year to year the things that were going on, what he was doing as a communist, how he was playing his part in being a good soldier, being a good comrade. And he was saying by the time the Palestinian conflict started occurring, there was talks within the ranks of the Communist International. What do we do about this? And the Communist International said that this is how we're going to further our interests. We're going to back the Arabs, and we're going to create a Soviet Arabistan. This became pan-Arabism, and we're going to begin to attack the Zionists. This is what the communists were saying back in the 1930s. Now,
this is blowing my mind because this is before 1948, the Zionists.
They hadn't done anything to anyone. They wasn't even a state yet.
This is so crazy. It's oh my God. Like, what is happening? Because there's another clip that I want to show. And it's getting I can't believe it's almost 10 o'clock, but go ahead.
Before you play this clip, can you I'm getting in the habit of having you pull stuff up.
Go ahead.
Can you pull up something called the Baku Conference? It's spelled BAKU. BAKU Conference 1920. Tell me what you can find about that.
1920?
Yep.
Congress of the Peoples of the East?
Yep.
This is just the wiki. Oh, well, okay. So there's the Wikipedia first, and then there's the Marxist Internet Archive. Which one would you like?
I'll let you pick. I'll let you. I'll let you
We'll
pick.
go with the Marxist Internet Archive. We're not.
Okay.
Let's go with that one here. Let me share my screen. Oh, y'all, hold on to your skivvies. Okay, I have a feeling we're about to be. We're gonna like it, but we're not gonna like it. All right. Here we go. Congress of the Peoples of the East, Baku, September 1920. This is 1920. Is this what we want, or is this
Yeah,
cool?
that's it.
Okay.
That's it. It's you know, they probably got the whole document up there. So I just wanted to show you guys, so in your spare time, this is something you can go and you can read for free. If you're interested and you want to know how Islam and communism became connected, that's a good place for you to start. Go and read the transcript of the Baku conference and what they discussed. Long story short, the communists said, okay, here's what we'll do. Because after the Bolshevik Revolution, the Communist Party found themselves in a position where they had access and dominion over all of these various minority identity groups. Of course, one of which being, you know, Muslims, Arabs, Turks, Persians, and so on and so forth. And so they said, well, we're an atheistic regime. We believe, and we don't believe in God, and these people, they're religious. So, you know, what do we do? How do we reconcile this? Well, they decided that they would use Islam to destabilize the West. This is back in 1920, because they said that their Western opponents, like France and England and some of these European nation states that still had colonies in Africa and in the Middle East and parts of Asia, they said, well, if we can raise a kind of a revolutionary spirit, if we can galvanize a revolutionary spirit amongst the minorities who are predominantly Muslim within these areas that are still colonial possessions of our Western rivals, then we can destabilize them from within. So let's use the Muslims against them.
Wow. Unbelievable. It says, moreover, okay, it says, moreover, it was familiar to Turks and Persians, as well as the former subject peoples of the Tsarist Empire, as a great industrial and cultural center, and for many a place of work. In his concluding speech, Zinoviev spoke of the Congress.
Yes, Gregory Zinoviev. That's how
Zinoviev, okay. He was, spoke of the Congress as a, quote, great historical event. He pointed out that people the bourgeoisie had looked upon as draught animals were now rising in revolt, and that nationalities separated by language and historic enmities were now coming to recognize their common interest in a struggle against imperialism. Our Congress has been heterogeneous, motley in its composition, he pointed out, but it had been united, I need my glasses, on all fundamental questions. There is little doubt, unfortunately, that Zinoviev's optimism was premature. The follow-up, okay, let's see. It is due to Stalinism that the Baku Congress has usually been passed over. Let's see. Let's see if he talks about the Turks and the Arabs, the Persians.
It wasn't Iran yet, but they, like I said, they put communist parties in all of these Muslim countries. They create communist parties in all these Muslim countries, and yeah. So you get, it goes into detail, because when they commission these large scale meetings. They take place over several days, and they write out the conclusion and what basically what the game plan is, and it's there for the public to go and read. But basically, they were saying, well, what do we do about all these Muslims? And it wasn't until after, because remember, the number one prior to Palestine, the major thorn in the side of Israel for years had been Egypt. Of course, Egypt took the lead on most of these things, and you had, of course, all these other Arab League countries, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria. And again, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. I think even Jordan, Egypt for sure. All of these were once upon a time majority Christian countries, ladies and gentlemen. Let's not forget. Okay, it's majority Christian countries, but no more. Okay, right? And so Egypt took the lead on this, and Egypt's president Gamal Nasser, who was himself a Soviet puppet, was a national socialist. Egypt became a socialist country under the leadership of Gamal Nasser, which, of course, everyone's probably familiar, if you know a bit of history about that particular conflict between Egypt and the Israelis. You're probably familiar with Gamal Nasser and his nationalization of the Suez Canal, which led to the Suez Crisis, which was another conflict between Israel and Egypt, because Egypt was sent in to free up the Suez Canal, because Egypt, again, was causing all sorts of mayhem. Egypt became the centerpiece of Muslim identity. It became the centerpiece, right? But the problem was, for many Muslims the world over, it was because Egypt's regime, Keisha, listen to me carefully, Egypt regime was seen as a regime that was far too secular. Yes, they kind of viewed them as the brothers in a sense, but they kind of rejected these secular notions of socialism and this and that and the third. Because one of the things that Gamal Nasser did under his rulership, because he didn't want to compete with Islamic fundamentalists, so he outlawed and criminalized the Muslim Brotherhood. Because remember, the Muslim Brotherhood, founded by Hassan al-Banna, right? A lot of these factions were outlawed in Egypt, same way in which these factions were outlawed in countries like Jordan and in Lebanon. You can go and look up the war between the Palestinian Liberation Organization and Jordan. But the Palestinian Liberation Organization is regarded as sort of like a secular, if you will, kind of an institution, because as I mentioned, their whole outlook is predicated upon these Marxist-Leninist principles and ideas.
Right.
Well, after Egypt, Keisha, after Egypt lost the 6-day war to Israel, Saudi Arabia had a plan. They was like, okay, because at this point in time, Gamal Nasser had finally been disgraced, because he had been given chance after chance after chance to defeat Israel, and he just couldn't do it. Because Gamal Nasser, he was the Herculean hero that was going to destroy Israel and destroy the Jews, and he couldn't do it. So Saudi Arabia said, all right, man, listen, bro, you screwing up, bro. Enough is enough. So by that time, Egypt was on a decline, because they had got his ass kicked by Israel again. And at this time, the Soviet Union under, I think, Brezhnev, by this time, he's like, all right, I'm through. We're no longer hitching our wagon to the Egyptians, because they can't get the job done.
Yeah.
So Egypt was in a bit of a funk, and so they reached out to Saudi Arabia, and they made an agreement. What was it called? It was called the I think they had did they have a name for it? But anyway, they were rivals of one another, the Egyptians and the Saudis. This time, Saudi Arabia king was a man named King Faisal, right? He was the king of Saudi Arabia at this time. And he said, okay, we'll lend you money, financial support, aid, et cetera, but you have to free up the Muslim Brotherhood, relinquish, free them, free the political prisoners, and send them to me. We'll give the Muslim Brotherhood free reign in Saudi Arabia, and in exchange, will help prevent your nation from completely collapsing. And so at this point, the emphasis shifts, and now all of a sudden, the Saudis become the big dog, and now Egypt has to take a back seat. Mind you, at this time, there is no Iran. And so now the Muslim Brotherhood is starting to rise up again, and they began challenging the secular Islamic regimes, and to hate to sound kind of like a paradox, but again, a lot of these Arab regimes were, again, because they had the backing of the Soviet Union, their whole rhetoric was steeped in Marxist lingo. But at the end of the 6-Day War, this is when they brought the theological language back of jihad, once the Saudis pressured Gamal Nasser into essentially liberating the Muslim Brotherhood. And then the language took it took a turn. And so again, Keisha, some of the Muslims, we supported some of them, with, for example, the Mujahideen in the war between the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, and so on and so forth. But and in this way, I hear people say, well, we created radical Islam. No, we didn't. No, we didn't.
Right.
There was something in the United States called Operation Cyclone, when the United States was funneling aid and resources to all of these radical Muslim groups because they were fighting communists. So again, some were against the communists, some weren't. But it's kind of one of those political trade-offs where you settle for the lesser of two evils. And that's when it became overtly religious again, for decades after the Bolshevik Revolution. The language of jihad was steeped in Marxist Leninist language. But yeah, Keisha, and the reemergence of the Arabs, because remember, at this time, Keisha, there's a lot of stuff you got to consider, because there's a lot of history to this thing now. It's part of the reason. Well, what was going on? Why we didn't have this problem with radical Islam? Why does it seem like this was just a phenomenon of the 20th century with terrorism and whatnot? Well, the reason being is because the end of the First World War, and by the time that Mustafa Ataturk took over Turkey and officially announced the end of the Turkish Empire, that marked the end of the caliphate, and therein lies the problem. Because for the longest time, that's what Islam, and this is what defines the kind of the totalitarian ambitions of Sunni Islam in particular, because Sunni Islam is a theology that believes in globalism through its caliphate. Because by then, Keisha, the Turks they were once subordinate to the Arabs as their slaves, and they rose up to overtake the Arabs, and the Turks they took control over the Ummah, the international Muslim community. They took it over, and the Arabs were upset about that. Keisha, I'm gonna give you. I'm sorry. I know you want to jump in, but people don't know the history again, and I think it's important that you know this. Keisha, do me a favor. Okay. I know you got to get out of here soon. Type this name, man. I want to show it to your audience, because I want us to learn, man. I want us to. There's a lot of people on the internet that don't know a dang thing, but they're always talking.
Yeah.
Listen to spell this, or I'm gonna spell this and type it up for me, and I want you to pull this person up.
Okay.
SHARIF, Sharif. Hussein, HUSS.
Wait, I already have him in my search. I don't know why, but
Sharif Hussein bin Ali.
Okay, yeah, I think we've talked about him before.
I don't remember talking to you about him before. Maybe I have.
Yeah, I think so. Okay.
He was the ruler of the Hashemite dynasty, right?
He's a looker. He's a real
right.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
He was the king of Hejaz, right? And what he wanted to do was, he would, like I said, he and many Arabs the world over, they were getting sick and tired of the Turks, all right? And they wanted to establish a new caliphate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, which was again, they wanted to take Islam, take the caliphate, take it over from the Turks, and create a new Arab state. And this was back in the 1920s. So guess who they called upon? They called upon the British. They called upon the British to help them establish a new Arab state. The British Empire at the time looked at the Ottomans as one of their major international geopolitical rivals.
Mm-hmm.
So in order to help bring down the Turkish Empire, the British Empire called on the assistance of the Arabs. This is most famously depicted in, of course, T.W. not T.W. Lawrence, Lord have mercy. What's his Lawrence of Arabia. I'm having a brain freeze on
Okay.
what his actual name was, but Lawrence of Arabia is an actual person, is a real person.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, with the military campaigns that he led along with the Arabs against the Turkish Empire, although the Lawrence of Arabia is a lot of his life has been largely fictionalized. A lot of it is lies, because the Arabs did very little to help topple the Ottoman Empire. But in their minds, they believed that they were the ones deserving of Palestine because they're the ones who helped the British defeat the Ottomans. Because the British Empire was backdoor dealing with the Arabs.
Wow.
So for all of this talk, well, everybody just does whatever Israel wants them to do. No, they don't. Because the British Empire was double
So
dealing.
the British Empire, which Tucker, I'm sorry, he was just on Piers Morgan a month or two ago talking about, oh, look at your country, it's going to the crapper, Piers. And y'all just let it happen. But here's the thing, he wasn't blaming the Muslims. So he was saying it's y'all who have let the country go. But he has he's still trying to, he's not trying to say that British and Islam or the Arabs or the Palestinians or whatever, that they were collabing. He never that never comes up. It's always smoke for the Jews. It's just smoke for the Jews at all. I mean, no matter what the history says, that's just where we end up with people like this. So it was actually Britons during this time and Arabs who were collaborating.
Yep, that's right.
Okay, and Muslims rather.
Yep, there were Arabs and the Muslims that were collaborating, because the British policy makers and muckety mucks were sort of split down. And that's probably being a little bit too fair, because the majority of Brits were probably anti the creation of a Jewish state, or with the whole Zionist project, because at this time during the 1920s there was still a lot of conversation as to how this was all going to work. The Jews were perfectly content with sharing that region of the world with their Muslim neighbors, but with the Muslims, they wouldn't have it.
What?
Okay, no, they wouldn't have it.
Tucker Carlson told us. Tucker said that it's Israel who are the extremely, this is a quote, the extremely violent ones, not the Arabs. So, all of this talk about,
when you, again, this is when you abandon, how can I put this? This is what's so important, and I think this is almost divine providence. This is why when people want to wonder why the Jews are so important, and just not just to the salvation of man, but just how it informs you on who you are, and who others are. Because when it comes to the issue, of course, there is no moral ambiguity, and it's part of the reason why that I, as a Christian, right, one of the things that we talk about as Christians, we talk about that we must be willing to acknowledge truth.
That's
And
it.
not so much, and not simply that the truth of who the Messiah is, right? But we're talking about an acknowledgement of the moral order. Because when you abandon not so much support for Israel strictly in a political sense, but when you become confused as to who has the moral high ground, you have
Come on now.
compromised yourself. And how dedicated to God are you as a Christian?
Hello.
When as a Christian, you turn your back on the moral order. Because there's no there's no gray area here. So again, Tucker Carlson is, he's demon possessed. I don't know if I mean that figuratively or literally, but he's certainly
I mean, I'll go on the record. I mean that literally. Literally, okay? I mean that biblically, literally. That's how I mean it.
I was thinking of T.E. Lawrence. I was getting him mixed up with the man named L.W. DeLawrence.
Oh, got
L.W.
you.
Lawrence is a different guy. T.E. Lawrence is, of course, Thomas Edward Lawrence, the famous Lawrence of Arabia. But yeah, Keisha, they were trying to help the Arabs establish an Arab state because they thought that the Arabs it would be easier to deal with them than to deal with the Turks. And so once the caliphate fell, that's when you kind of saw the rise of Pan-Arabism and then Islamic liberation by the end of the 6-Day War.
All of this, and I know that was a lot, everybody. It's a lot to it. And so I think a couple things. I think when we hear people like Tucker, Candace, like all of the big loud voices, just by tonight, this is just a smidgen of all of the things that have gone on between the Jews and the Arabs and Persia. And I mean, there is a lot of history here. So when people try to kind of just sum it up really quick for you and like, oh, these are the bad guys, with no evidence, none whatsoever, that's a red flag, because it clearly is. They like to pretend that Israel just came on the scene in 1948. As Chris, this is why it bothers me so bad, because these are Christians who are saying this predominantly. It is the Christians who claim to worship the same God. They won't acknowledge this, but they're claiming the same God from the Old Testament. They want to act like they want to get rid of the Old Testament. So basically, we're just going to skip past in the beginning, God created heaven and earth, and just go right to Jesus and somehow remove him from being a Jew. It is crazy. You have to be able to discern the truth. And if it's confusing to you, the Bible tells us what to do. He tells us, submit your thoughts to the word of God. One of the miracles that we have living in the earth is that we have a God who speaks back. He talks back and he wants to. He enjoys it. I have not been this close to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Even when I first became a Christian, I am God has elevated my experience with him. I still am amazed at the God of the universe, the King of the universe, who created me and knows all of my foolishness, all of my wickedness, wrongness, all the things, and loves me anyway and wants to be in communication with me. It blows my mind because I know I'm not worthy. I know I don't. Well, I mean, through Christ, I am worthy. Thank God. Thank God. And thank God for the Jews, because here is why. Because they were the ones that God created, the people that he created for Christ to come through. I don't even understand how a Christian could fix their mouth to talk about Israel or the Jews in such disgusting, it is disgusting. And then, and out the same mouth, you want to claim Christ is king. How dare you? How dare you fix your lips to try? It is demonic. That there is no other word for it. It is demonic. I'm on the record saying it. I don't care who. If you claim to be a Christian and there is no conviction in you when you start saying these things towards, first of all, towards anybody, particularly towards God's chosen people. Yes, they are God's chosen people. And you know what? I was thinking yesterday, maybe even this morning, this whole thing about I've heard somebody recently say God, the chosen people, God's chosen people choose God. Since when? When? Show me in the Bible where any group of people chose God. You know, we just, Adam and Eve didn't even choose God. What are you talking about? The chosen people choose God. Who? Which ones?
Right.
Adam and Eve couldn't even get it right. But the chosen people choose God? No, they don't. Look at the Jews' history. And God, you know what? God doesn't even spare them the embarrassment. You got all your history is right before the entire world of how you rejected God. But you know what they never talk about? He never left them. Never. Not once. Because that's not who he is. That's not the kind of God that we serve. He had never, even when God is finished dueling out the punishments, the curses on Adam and Eve, the very next chapter, chapter 4, where he's talking to Cain and Abel, and he says, Cain, sin is right there at your door. He was still right there when your mama and your daddy had messed up all of humanity. Where was God? Where was Yahweh? Right there with his creation, still trying to help, still trying to guide you, still trying. And what did Cain do? He rejected God. He killed his brother. So miss me with this whole talk of you acting like you can boast because you found the bread, the true and living God. You found you have found the bread of life. But you don't want to share the bread with nobody else. You want to keep the bread from the Jews. You make me sick. You do. You make me sick.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know that was a rant, but I have to play this one clip because Tucker Carlson actually finally says the part out loud that we've all known that he's been waiting to say. He has now said that, Trump has turned his back on America, America first. I got to play this because
I'm here. I'm here for it.
Out there.
I'm here for it.
We're going to play this and then we'll give a quick commentary and then wrap it up.
All right.
Donald Trump has betrayed America first?
I think that this war is something that he promised he wouldn't do, not once, but countless times. And until YouTube is banned, we'll be able to prove that. And the idea behind it is not only contrary to America first, it may be its inverse. There's no argument that changing the regime in Iran helps the United States. And if there is an argument, I'd love to hear it. And by the way, if that argument is sensible and convincing, I will support it. All I care about is the United States. But I haven't heard that argument a single time. All I've heard is the kind of tiresome fear-mongering about nuclear weapons, which Iran did not have.
This is so demonic. But, oh my God, yeah. If you have family members, if you have anybody that believes this garbage, Donald Trump has been the most transparent president we have had probably ever, besides maybe George Washington or something like that. I'm saying certainly in our lifetimes, Donald Trump literally tells you exactly what he's thinking, even when you like, okay, Donald, you really didn't have to say all that about Robert Mueller or whatever. But when has he ever not told us as much as he possibly could in a situation? And the fact that he would get on TV with a journalist and say this when everybody knows that Trump has laid out the mission many times is first, it is very bold. It is that's a bold demon that's up in that man. It's bold, okay? He gets up there, he looks in the camera, and he will still lie to your face. Okay, it's almost done.
It's insulting, actually, even to make that argument to me.
No, you're insulting.
That Iran's nuclear program posed such a threat to the United States 3 weeks ago that we had to launch a full-scale war against them. No one's even arguing that because it's stupid, and the facts don't support it. So why did we do this when we did it? Because Israel wanted to do it. They chose the timing here. No one disputes that. And timing in war, as in life, is a lot of it, and it determines outcome. And they hadn't thought through what was going to happen next. The Israelis hadn't, and we hadn't, because we didn't have time to.
So, it sounds to me like you think he has betrayed it.
This war is clearly contrary to what he promised and contrary to the idea that your leaders should put your interests before those of foreigners, period. We put Israel's interests before ours. Trump did that. Bibi's wasn't elected president of my country. My president was. I supported him, obviously, voted for him. But yeah, the question is whether the person who makes the ultimate decision, who would be President Trump, should have pushed back. That's it. Of course, Trump should have pushed back.
As previous presidents have done.
To some extent, some very limited extent. George W. Bush didn't push back. We wound up in the Iraq War, and now everyone pretends, oh, had nothing to do with Israel. I was there. I was talking to Bush. That's not true. That's a lie. And that's why it's so important, from my perspective, to say out loud what is true before history is rewritten and disappears. And it's lying, and it gets us here. Because we say, oh, no, lobbying efforts had no effect. Really? We say that about our pharmaceutical policy? No. Everybody understands that every policy a large government makes, including ours, is influenced by various stakeholders who were affected by that policy. But this is the one area we have to be like, no, it had nothing to do with the fact that his biggest donors were pushing him to do this, or that Bibi visited 7 times in 1 year. Are you joking? I'm not going to play along with the lies anymore. I don't hate Jews. I don't hate Israel.
Liar.
I love my country. This has happened yet again. I can give you a whole list of previous times where it's happened. And I think we need to know what happened so we don't hurt ourselves further.
If you deal in the arena of facts and not fiction, that clip probably pissed you off, because it certainly pissed me off. Thank you, MTX485, for this super chat. Tucker is a prosty.
Mm-hmm.
And he is so inauthentic and a liar, I might add. And I also want to say thank you to Antonio. Hi, Antonio. Thank you for the super chat, super sticker. And DT, thank you so much for the super sticker. Thank you guys for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. Oh my goodness gracious. That sent me. Now, mind you, and somebody just said it in the chat, this is the same man that he's so America first, that he thinks that America should we should cease being the superpower and just come into just share our wealth. We should just split it between the other nations. That's what he said with the Xinjiang, the moonshine man. He over there drinking moonshine in the high schools in Moonshine Academy.
Right.
I'm sorry. What are your thoughts, Chuck, on that piece of garbage? Excuse me.
Yeah, I got a lot of things to say. That Israel's war. My goodness, where do I start? Okay, well let me start. Let me start with the money. He talked about lobbying. What did he say? Something about lobbying and policy makers and this and that. First of all, Trump didn't start this war. Right? As you and I, Keisha, we've talked about before.
Mm-hmm.
This war has been going on for several decades. Trump
Yeah.
is just the only president with the stones to do the thing that someone else should have done a long time ago.
That's correct.
I forgot what it was. Israel did something back during the 1980s, and I remember. Well, I don't remember. I was too young. But Ronald Reagan, he placed financial sanctions on Israel for something they did, and of course, this is years after. Of
Oh,
course,
on Israel?
yeah, I forgot what Israel
Okay.
did. You may be able to find it. But this was after 1978, right? After the 1973 war against Egypt, when Israel finally took the Sinai Peninsula, right, in a war of self-defense when they were attacked again.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to try and make peace, what did Israel do? Israel did what Israel always does. It gave the Muslims what they wanted, and they still continue to attack them.
Yeah.
And the terrorism didn't stop.
That's
After
what
the
they
war.
always
That's right.
freaking
I
do.
do.
I don't
Well,
understand this. I'm sorry. It just
go
doesn't
ahead,
make
jump
any
in.
sense.
No,
Like, first
jump
of
in.
all, Cube, you about to get this really ain't the time, okay? It's Keisha. All right. Expand your horizons, okay? Like a quiche pie is spelled with a Q too. Today is really not the time. Anyway, excuse me. I have some inappropriate guests that have tried to break into my house tonight. But if you I mean, you don't even have to know a whole lot of history, but I can tell you that whenever somebody's about to blow something up or do any, I don't ever hear them talking about, oh, I'm a rabbi and he got bombs strapped to it. Just no, I don't hear that. I don't hear nobody going in talking about, oh, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, here we go and we about to block. I don't hear any other people who want to behead you, blow you up, and do all these kind of things to you, except Islamists.
Yeah, it's not.
I don't like my eyes. They work really well. My hearing works good and I can read and comprehend. So I don't have to even know. Like, I can just, like, in my lifetime, I lived in Connecticut when the Twin Towers came down. I remember the helicopters, over the Connecticut airspace. The You don't know. I don't understand. Oh, but I'm sorry, because that was Israel too, according to these people.
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah.
This is demonic. And if you believe this junk in the comments, oh God,
Hold
here
on.
we go. If you believe this junk, Kevin, you need to go back and watch the whole episode because you don't know what you're talking about. Okay.
Let Kevin
Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Before you bounce Kevin, if you choose, let him stick around for a while. He might learn something, but that's if he shuts up long enough to learn something and stop typing and clicking away with his fingers. At the end of the 73 war against Egypt, by 1978, of course, Egypt and Israel reached an agreement, and in that agreement, Israel gave back control of the Sinai Peninsula to the Egyptians. Okay.
Right.
This would eventually lead to, by that time, the president of Egypt was, and this man, he came up and made his bones during the years of Gamal Nasser. And that is Anwar Sadat. Well, of course, Anwar Sadat was assassinated by a jihadi. Why? Because, well, Anwar Sadat agreed to some kind of quote unquote peace arrangement with the Israelis, which was in strict violation of something called the Khartoum Resolution. The Khartoum Resolution. I won't read it out. A bunch of Muslim leaders got together in Sudan, Khartoum, Sudan, And what they came away with was something called the resolution. And the cartoon resolution is also referred to as the 3 no's. You all can look up the cartoon resolution when you get a chance, but Anwar Sadat decided that he wanted to negotiate a peace deal of some sort with the Israelis. And because he violated the resolution, he was assassinated by a jihad. I think it was 3 or 4 conspirators that participated in the plot to assassinate Anwar Sadat, which they successfully did, I think, in 1981. Side note, Keisha, to go back to what you said, yes, there are Jews. There's some bad Jewish actors who have done some things, but they are dealt with severely by whatever country that they find themselves in. Israel, especially, they don't take too kindly to Jews who do immoral and illegal things according to the secular law system in the form of representative government that they practice there, because of course Israel is an outpost of Western civilization surrounded by Islamic theocracies. Okay, but these people are dealt with, and it's not a systematic issue within Judaism, and it sure as hell isn't a part of the Torah or the Tanakh. It's not a part of Hebrew theology, which is what we'll get to. But Keisha, there was that in 78. You fast forward to 1994, you have the Oslo Accords, which gave the Palestinian Liberation Organization control over the West Bank. Right, so there go Israel again. They gave the PLO control over the West Bank at Oslo, and this is what facilitated or precipitated the granting of the quote unquote Nobel Peace Prize to Yasser Arafat and Prime Minister Rabin. I think Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated a year later by a Jewish, they called him, of course, a right-wing extremist who assassinated the Prime Minister of Israel for the Oslo agreement. But there's that. So there's Israel giving more ground, of course. And then what was it? Ariel Sharon, I think I mentioned this last week. And once again, more peace talks with the Palestinians. Ariel Sharon went to give a speech at Temple Mount, right, the place where this became one of the holiest sites in Islam as a result of a schism between rival Muslim factions. One was in Medina and Mecca, and one was in Jerusalem. I can name the person, the leader of the Jerusalem faction, because by then they had taken control of Jerusalem from the Christians, and there was an internecine conflict between Muslims. And in order to legitimize his stake or his authority, he commissioned the construction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque. His name was Ibn al-Malik ibn Marwan. So this is how Jerusalem became a major component of Islamic theology. It was written into the record in reverse, because Jerusalem was never a key component of Islamic theology.
Right.
Muhammad tried to make Jerusalem a fixture of it, because once again, he was trying to usurp Jewish theology. He was trying to borrow it in a sense. And the reason why he switched it and made, of course, the holiest site be Mecca was because it was something that the peoples of Arabia would already recognize. They didn't know anything about Jerusalem. They didn't know what the heck he was talking about, so it didn't catch on. So anyway, when Ariel Sharon steps foot at the Temple Mount, this is what sets off the second Intifada. So the second Intifada, and this is when, the whole guys, they talk about, they're keeping them under, lock and key. It's a colony, there's checkpoints, there's a wall, there's this and that, and they're abusing the peoples of Gaza and this and the third. Well, that was, of course, in response to the bombings and the stabbings and the, we all know how the story goes. When you fast forward a few years, against the advice, against the better judgment of a younger Benjamin Netanyahu, who said that we should not give control of the Gaza Strip, hand control of the Gaza Strip over to Hamas. And the Israelis did it anyway. And then what did the Israelis do? What did the Palestinians do? They continued to engage in more terror.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why, people talk about the way Hamas, they hide behind civilians. And again, the civilians don't do that begrudgingly. They're more than willing to play the role.
Many of them, yes.
Because they see it as an honor to be a shield for Hamas. The people say,
yes,
well, it's not the Palestinian people, it's Hamas. No, they're one.
Oh my gosh!
This is how they trick you, because you don't know the schemes of Islam. You don't know how they work. And the reason why Hamas feels as though it is moral to do this is because they were following Muhammad's example. And this is another key difference between.
That's what I'm saying. It's baked into the cake. What are we talking about?
Right, I'm gonna explain it. This is another key difference between Judaism and Islam, because Judaism and Christianity and Islam, because Christians and Jews recognize the infallibility of their prophets. They're simply messengers of God, but the message is God's message, not necessarily theirs. It's a human story, and it's told by humans from a human perspective. But it is done within the throes of a negotiation, in a sense, with a spiritual father, that being God, that wants that covenantal relationship. This is part of the reason why within the West we developed morally beyond the Islamic world, because within Judeo-Christian thought places an emphasis on individual consciousness. That's why we are supposed to reconcile our consciousness with the commands of God. This is why God gives us a choice. He gave us choice and free will so that we can understand what true love is by practicing actual morality through a cultivation of virtue, not through command and fear. That's what Islam does for its adherents. This is why we as Jews and Christians, we are morally superior within ourselves, not individually, so to speak, but this is why our societies are more morally evolved, because Judeo-Christian ethic and Judeo-Christian thought demands that we cultivate virtue. This is part of the reason, Keisha, why symbolically Jacob, what did Jacob do before Jacob became Israel? He wrestled with God.
He wrestled. That is, that for people, see, a Muslim, that you can't understand that. You can't understand, because Allah is so far away from you. He don't talk to you. He's sending you he's guaranteeing you hell. He guarantees you hell. Our God says, believe in me and I guarantee you life everlasting, heaven.
Right.
You believe in Islam, you're guaranteed hell. You get no guarantee. There's no security. It's so much more than that, though.
The only legitimate, I forgot, I saw an author who worded it this way. I wish I could remember his name. I would cite him. I don't want to take credit, but he described it like this as far as Muhammad is concerned, because of course in the Islamic tradition they consider Muhammad to be the perfect example, as they call it, right? And so that's the only legitimate Islamic hermeneutic, is the example of Muhammad. So how do you know what Allah wants you to do and how Allah wants you to live? You do what Muhammad did. And so what did Muhammad did? Muhammad feared assassination from his Meccan rivals. He thought that they were coming to kill him, according to the Sunnah, not the Sunnah, the Hadith, or Sunnah Hadith. Sometimes those words are used interchangeably, but technically they mean two different things. But I don't know the whole etymological differences on how they explain it between the word Sunni and Hadith. But nevertheless, the narrative is that Muhammad feared that he was going to be assassinated, and so therefore he asked his cousin Ali, who of course Shia Muslims believe was the rightful successor of Abu Bakr. He asked Ali to lie in his bed and pretend to be him because he thought that his rivals were going to come kill him in his sleep. And so he made his cousin sleep in his place. And so this is why Muslims believe that it is not dishonorable to have someone else lie in your place to act as a shield so that you may escape and that your enemies kill them instead, because Muhammad is the perfect example. And so there's that. You got, Muslims who, I mean, of course, Yahya Sinwar, right? What the head commander of Hamas, the mastermind behind the September 7th attacks. Remember, he was in an Israeli prison. He was
Yes.
let out of prison because
Yes.
he was in prison. He was serving, I think, multiple life sentences, if memory serves me correctly, because guess what now? What Yahya Sinwar did was, and what he was convicted of is that he was convicted of murder. And he murdered not Jews, but he was convicted by the Israeli court system for having murdered 2 Palestinians that he murdered because he believed that they were homosexual. So he killed them. He was tried and sentenced by an Israeli court, was given a life sentence, and was, of course, as we all know, as so much has been said about it, Israel swapped him out for a kidnapped IDF soldier by the name of Gilead Shalit. We all familiar with that story. And then Yahya Sinwar goes on to plan the October 7th attacks with the help of his main financiers, the Shiite clerics of Iran, of course, right? Okay. So all this stuff
Oh,
goes
no,
on.
no,
So,
not Iran. Iran's been fantastic.
So
Oh my gosh.
Israel sucks. Israel the bad guy. And I'm about to let you jump in, Keisha. Let me just cite the Quran real quick, so I give you guys so you know where this is coming from, because Tucker brought up lobbying. He said something about lobbying, and this is another example. I hate to borrow a term from the left, but this is more anti-Jewish dog whistling, if you will. You know, the left, they love that term, dog.
Yeah.
Putting out dog whistles, right? Because they're professionals, so they know when someone is being a racist, even if they don't perceive it that way.
Okay.
Tell you
They know.
right. But this is what Tucker is doing, because of course it plays into the whole stereotype about Jews, having wealth and money and so on and so forth, right? And so we always love to talk about how Israeli money is doing this and that, or AIPAC, right? AIPAC has an inordinate amount of sway over American foreign policy, perhaps even American domestic policy. But nevertheless, Arabs, I don't know if people know this. I don't know if Tucker knows this. I don't know if, but all the major bankers, the Rothschilds and all those EV Greek, I don't know if y'all know this, but Arabs got a lot of money.
Okay.
The petrodollar, Gulf money goes a long way. They got money, and they lobby too, and they do a whole lot of things. For all the talk, people love to talk about AIPAC, but they don't talk about NIAC. NIAC is an Iranian lobbying firm whose main base and office is situated in Washington, D.C.
Of course.
Well, Tucker knows about that, right?
He knows.
Saudi Arabia, there's something, Keisha, called, I'm gonna tell you what it's called, because they act as like a parallel. They act as a parallel United Nations. I'm gonna tell you the name of it, so you guys can look it up in your spare time. It's called the OIC. If you're not familiar with the OIC, that stands for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Oh, geez.
They represent 57 majority Islamic states. And guess what they do at the UN? And of course, the UN filters its agenda items down to individual states, so on and so forth, right? Which is a huge, the motivating spirit behind this America First stuff, because we're tired of the international community overriding the will of the sovereign. I get all of that. But guess what? Guess what's happening? The Muslims are gaining control over the UN's agenda. And they use organizations like the OIC to push for they use it to push for the criminalization of quote unquote Islamophobia. They do this at the UN at the behest of 57 majority Islamic countries. Saudi Arabia has their own lobbying arm in other parts of the world, particularly Great Britain. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to slowly change your society from within through policy making, through mass immigration, through using the language of progressivism, of tolerance, and these kind of things and all that, and playing on our Western sensibilities. One of the reasons why we in the West, the this stupid idiot Candace Owens talking about some Judeo-Christian. Who's a Judeo-Christian? What does that even mean? No one's a Judeo-Christian. It's like, you dumb broad. It's not a person or a certain church or religion that's called the Judeo-Christian religion. This is why we talk about the Judeo-Christian creed or the Judeo-Christian ethic, because out of that theology or those spiritual systems came a certain philosophy. And what philosophy does, it gives clarity, in a sense, to theological thought. It's not so much a departure as much as it is a complement. Okay, these are two unique and consistent systems. And one of the reasons why free speech is such a sacrosanct value here in the West is because we believe so fervently in truth that we believe that the truth is not beyond criticism, that the truth can be challenged and it will not be phased, because we believe in the inherent rightness, the correctness of that capital T truth. This is one of, and again, it's built into our thinking, our institutions, and our principles. This is why we believe in free speech. We believe in open debate. We believe in dissent, because we believe in the power of the truth. Islam.
Wait. Before you move, now, where does that thinking come from, Chuck?
Bible.
Where does it come from?
That's the Jews. That's
the Bible.
That's
and
God.
Particularly the Old Testament.
The Old Testament. That's
it comes from the Old Testament.
Yeah. So you don't have that in Islam, because in many of these Muslim majority countries, they have blasphemy laws and anything. You can't offend the prophet. You can't do this, you can't do that. And so they use but see, here's the thing. They hide behind pluralism and multiculturalism and whatnot, but the only way that pluralism works is if all the participants involved agree to abide by the rules of the game. Muslims want to take advantage of the rules, or Islam, call it whatever you want to call it. It's not Islamism, because Islamism is just a euphemism for it's just a euphemism for practicing Islam in its entirety. It's a measure of how much of the faith can you actually adhere to. So they want to exploit the rules, but they don't want to be good faith actors who participate in the game on square footing with the rest of us. And so it's not just about waging jihad physically. It's about waging jihad through politics, and it's about waging jihad through money and wielding influence. You don't believe me? I'm gonna pull straight from the Quran. Let me give you some insight into what the Quran said. This is Quran chapter 2, verse 20, chapter 2, verse 216. This is what Allah commands them to do. Check this out. I hope can somebody get this to Tucker? Can we send him this?
Chapter 2, verse what?
Chapter 2, verse 216. It reads, "Fighting has been made obligatory upon you believers. Though you dislike it, perhaps you dislike something which is good for you, and like something which is bad for you. But Allah knows, and you do not know." So you got to do it. You're obliged to fight, is what the Quran says. I'll give you, let's see here. I want to make sure. Do you think you will? This is a few verses before. This is 2:14. Do you think you will be admitted into paradise without being tested like those before you? They're talking about war. They were afflicted with suffering and adversity, and were so violently shaken that even the messenger and the believers with him cried out, "When will Allah's help come?" Indeed, Allah's help is always near. Let's go to Quran.
How would you know? He
How
don't
would you
talk
know?
to you. He sure enough ain't coming for you.
Right.
So how would you even know?
Mm-hmm. Check this one. I like this one here. Those believers who stay at home, except those with valid excuse. I guess you need a doctor's note. But it says, Quran chapter 4, verse 95. Chapter 4, verse 95, the Quran reads, this is An-Nisa, Surah Al-Nisa. Those believers who stay at home, except those with valid excuses, are not equal to those who strive in the cause of Allah with their wealth and their lives. Allah has elevated in rank those who strive with wealth and their lives above those who stay behind with valid excuses. Allah has promised each a fine reward, but those who strive will receive a far better reward than others. So it's fear and reward. You fear Allah's wrath, but then if you do what Allah says, you get reward. But get this, Keisha, the reward is not a relationship with God and closeness with God. What Allah rewards is the flesh. Even in the afterlife, He rewards you by appeasing your carnal desires.
Yes. Oh, 72 version. Yes.
And describing them as having big breasts and these kinds of things. It's just what kind of God is this?
Okay.
Do you
seriously?
The Quran chapter 3 verse 141. Do you think you will enter paradise without Allah, proving which of you truly struggled for his cause and patiently endured? This is known as the Surah of Spoils. This is Al-Anfal. I really like go and matter of fact, read. You could probably read the Quran in a couple of months, maybe a couple of weeks. It's not that long of a read, but the Quran chapter 8 is called the chapter of spoils, where Allah specifically tells his followers or tells Muslims who follow the Prophet Muhammad how they are to divide the spoils of war. This is one verse from the chapter of spoils. They ask you, O Prophet, regarding spoils of war. Say, their distribution is decided by Allah and his messengers. So be mindful of Allah, settle your affairs, and obey Allah and his messenger, right? And if you are true believers. I mean, I can do this all night. It just goes on and on. Chapter 9, verse 20. This is my last one. Those who have believed, immigrated, and strived in the cause of Allah with their wealth and their lives are greater in rank in the sight of Allah. It is they who will triumph. So you raise jihad with your wealth and with your life. They believe so. All this talk, just the Jews and the usury and the money lending and they exploiting people. Well, the Quran specifically instructs Muslims to use their wealth to wage jihad.
Come on now. And here's the thing too. The Jews, their book doesn't condone wickedness. So if they are doing wickedness, they're not doing it in accordance to their law, their book. They are doing it of their own free will. Muslims, when they do wickedness, they literally can say, my God told me to do it.
Yeah.
What are we talking? Like, it's not even remotely it's not the same. Allah is not. Y'all need to go and read the Quran yourself. Do not be. People don't even want to read the Bible themselves and be actually Christians. So it's like,
and mind you, I hear all of this talk. These people, they just, it's just disgusting. All for everything that's written about, for example, in the Talmud, right? They love to talk about what the Talmud says.
Yeah.
They love to cherry pick the Talmud, don't understand it. And the Talmud is such a massive work. It's such a huge work.
Yes.
The Talmud is well over 2 million words. It's a very massive work. And all it is rabbinic commentary, where
Right.
the rabbis are debating issues, and they're debating issues that pertain to Jews exclusively. They don't mean
Mm-hmm.
to export this. They don't necessarily want to demand that you do exactly what they say, that this person, this one. That's not what it is.
Yeah.
And it's a commentary between rabbis where certain ideas are being fleshed out, being debated, and being talked
Mm-hmm.
about. It's not a
Yeah.
divine command from Allah. That's not
Right.
what it is. But people love to cherry pick the Talmud, and I've never really truly studied it. Don't know who its authors are. Don't have the
Seriously.
faintest idea. But they leapfrog the Quran again to go straight to Jews and their holy books. The reason being is because, like I said before, Keisha, and I'm going to repeat it here, and that people inherently know, at least I believe, inherently know that cowardice is no virtue. So they
Right.
want to assuage or massage their heroic impulse. So if they can convince themselves through whatever manner of moral or intellectual gymnastics that they are fighting the good fight,
Mm-hmm.
they can just go on and on about Jews whilst refusing to confront the obvious, because the obvious is too hard. So again, they choose the path of least resistance, because at least by calling out Jews, they can still convince themselves that they're doing something heroic.
Mm-hmm.
But you
It's
can't
the
talk about
left.
Jews.
It's
Yeah,
a virtue signal.
yeah, yeah,
It's a virtue signal.
yeah.
It's the horseshoe. It's what we saw this. We kind of started, we talked a little bit about it on Cutting Through the Culture. Not much. But I used to say that some of these bliggities were progressives in conservative clothes. We saw, and some of them same ones around here saying, right along with Tucker, their minds have not been renewed. Okay, you're not dealing with people whose minds have been renewed. You are dealing with people who just, they're saying, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we heal the sick? And he said, I never knew you. I don't know who you are. And then since we don't have a relationship, you can't live with me forever, because you know how we have borders, and you don't just allow anybody up in your space that you don't know, that you don't have a relationship with. We get that from God. That ain't you. You didn't make that up. We get that from him. So, you know, this whole thing, you have to be willful. You have either participated and ate at the table of lies and deceit, and that thing has taken root in you, and now you are blind, or you're willfully blind, and you just want a virtue signal, and you're just a little bit too much of a coward to actually confront and say what Islam is. I will tell you 10 toes that, look, if I can't say it right now in front of everybody, God says, if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before my Father. I will tell you right now, it is not real Islam. Allah is not the true and living God. Yahweh is the true and living God. He has a son. His name is Jesus. He's the true and living God. And the Holy Spirit gives us guidance and information in the earth. And he's the true and living God. One God in three persons. That's the true and living God. And I will say that to whomever. Okay. Makes me know, never mind. Huh?
Now, like I said, Keisha, they changed the nature of God because they attempt to turn God into a liar, into a deceiver. Because with the Quran tries, first of all, they try to excuse away Christ's divinity by saying that Mary was a virgin and she didn't have sex. And when it comes to the entire crucifixion episode, of course, the Quran infamously teaches that Allah deceived Christians, deceived the people.
Yes.
by making them believe that Christ was crucified when he was not. It was someone else. He put a fast one over on you. It wasn't Jesus. Jesus was not crucified. God just made it appear as though it happened. And in the last days, it says that Jesus, of course, is going to return and quote unquote break the cross and kill the pigs. So that's their thing. And so Keisha, you said something and it reminded me and said that's why people they want to go to the quote unquote hidden because it's an ego trip for a lot of folk because they can try and give off the impression to people who are dumb enough or gullible enough to listen to them that they have some sort of insight that the rest of us don't have. And so while it looks like Islam, I don't even want to say Islamic extremism because I don't necessarily want to qualify it, but they say, well, it appears as though that is a civilizational threat on the surface. But what you don't know is that the true threat lies elsewhere. And it is up to them to highlight, to illuminate this fact to you, because they are the only ones wise enough and intelligent enough to do it. And so it's an ego trip for a lot of these folk, which I believe is the rationale for so much of this moral confusion, because it is because what the presence of Islam does is I've said this before as well, and I'll say it again. What Islam does, it betrays their liberal sensibilities. It is a betrayal of their liberal sensibilities. But the problem with liberalism is classical liberalism. It has become a student that has betrayed its master. What I mean is it kind of relegated worship of God. It relegated it to it was fact, and then it relegated it to mere opinion. Right? It took this idea of this kind of this push against mythology, sort of like became the new mythology. And secularism has gone off the rails so much so that it forgot the seed that it grew from, that it grew out of. And why am I saying all of this? I'm saying all of this because the reason why regime change didn't work in Iraq, and regime change, contrary to what many people say, did work in other instances, because we had toppled regimes that had more in line with our way of thinking, because we changed Germany's regime, and now Germany is one of our greatest allies. We dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, and Japan became an ally. We didn't even depose or execute Emperor Hirohito. What was the emperor's name? Hirohito. I forgot how he said it, but
I have no idea.
he remained. He remained because, of course, China they had a prime minister and they had an emperor. Prime Minister Hideki, and then they had an emperor. He remained in power. China reformed itself, and now China is one of our biggest allies in Asia after having dropped 2 nuclear bombs upon them. Right. You look at what we did with the Korean War. Right. Not a full victory, but I guarantee the peoples of South Korea are certainly happy we intervened in that conflict, because many people did not want to go communist. Okay.
Yeah.
The left, we didn't lose the Vietnam War abroad because the Vietnamese never won a single battle on the battlefield. We lost the ideological war at home. And it was for that reason that we lost Vietnam and Cambodia, was because of the ideological war we lost to the left at home.
You know what? I'm sorry. That guy, that Zhang, the first guy, the Asian guy, the professor guy, he was talking about how Iran, it's just going to end up just like Vietnam. You can already see it, blah, 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 blah. Maybe that's what they're trying to create. They're trying to create the internal American conflict so it does not work.
And
just
again,
so they can be right.
Right. And it may or may not, it may not become, Persia may not become the great, the jewel of the Middle East like it once was. I mean, I think that title goes to Israel, Israel now. I think it's probably going to stay that way. But Iran is a massive,
Yeah.
country
Oh, yeah.
geographically. But it may go back to being the Persia it once was, or maybe it won't. But the reality is that while they're trying to figure themselves out,
Mhm.
that's time that its leadership, that the revolutionary government of Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, is not plotting the destruction of Israel in the United States,
Correct.
which will then, of course, facilitate the return of the 12th Imam. We don't have to worry about that as long as they're busy picking themselves up off the ground. So just kick them in the mouth, let them fall down, and when they get back up, we're gonna kick them again in a couple. And it just gonna go on and on and on and on and
Right.
on. Because again, the conflict is not geographical, it's not even political. It's a war of ideas. It all boils down to how we see the world, and how we see the world is predicated upon how we conceptualize the nature of our deity, how we conceptualize the nature of our God. And this is why, quote unquote, regime change did not work in Iraq, because we discounted the Islamic tradition of that region. And this is why they're stuck in this kind of 7th century morality, because their entire moral code is centered around the life of a man who lived 14,000 years ago. And they've been stuck there ever since. And that's why, quote unquote, regime change didn't work. But regime change worked in other contexts as well. When we've defeated adversaries in war, and those very same adversaries turned around in the future and became some of our greatest allies. It can happen. But these
It
people are so
definitely can.
fatalistic, they don't even want to do the thing that needs to be done. Because what we've done in the West is we have placed comfort above sacrifice. And that's what leisure has done for us. It goes back, Keisha, and I'm done, and we can end the show if you want to. There is a 15th century, and I mentioned him last week, and this is a good time to introduce him. I said his name, Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun, the 14th century Arab philosopher. His most famous book, he wrote a book called the Muqaddimah. It's spelled Muqaddimah. But point is that Ibn Khaldun made a statement about Arabs. He referred to them as barbarian. He referred to them as savages. As a matter of fact, I want to just quote, if I can, here, Ibn Khaldun's, one of his quotes that I found in describing Arab life, Arab society. Just give me 1 second. What did he say? If I could find it, because I know it's getting late and we're ready to go.
Yeah, my husband gonna be like 11.
Yeah, I know. If I can't find it,
Oh, he told me to tell you hi, by the way.
what's up, man? I could have sworn I had it, because guys, when I'm talking to you guys, man, I have so many notes and stuff pulled up right in front of me, but it doesn't look like I'm gonna be able to find it quickly as I want to, because I wrote it down somewhere because I wanted to share it with y'all. But anyway, Ibn Khaldun, he said of the matter of fact, I did find it right before I was about to give up. So here's what he once famously said, describing Arabs. He said, Arabs are the most savage human beings that exist. Compared with sedentary people, they are on a level of wild, untamable animals and dumb beasts of prey. Such people are the Arabs. Now, why is he saying this? Now, it sounds like Khaldun is like he's speaking down to them. In a sense, it sounds very mean, sounds very derogatory, even if it's true. By our modern sensibilities, we say that's not a nice thing to say about a people. But the full context of Ibn Khaldun's statement He says that this is what makes these people ripe for conquering, and that's why they are such a formidable enemy to those who have fallen victim and fallen prey to luxury. This is what we've done in the West.
Wow.
We have
Wait, so he said this before 1979.
Yeah, he lived in the 1400s. He said
Oh,
the most
wow.
savage human being that exists compared with sedentary people. He said that they're more savage than you. They're more brutal than you. That's why they are going to win. They are on a level of wild, untamable animals and dumb beasts of prey. Such people are the Arabs. He said that luxury and a sedentary life has made the West, made Christian society weak. And if you all aren't careful, you're going to be consumed, because these are the people who are strong. These are the people who build empires. The savage, the tribal, the nomad, not the sedentary person.
What is that quote? Like, weak men make hard times make strong men. Strong men make good times, something like that.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but that's what that is. I mean, it's awful to say, but that is true, because like you said, you do lose your sensibilities when you're not really in the world and you're not interacting with people. You lose, like, it's, especially men need that. You can't just be in the office, there's no conflict. Y'all have to keep your sword sharpened. You know what I mean? Like, I think men need that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm not a man, but that's when societies go bad, when the men they're too lax, like the Tuckers. They just want to sit behind desk and complain all day. You know what I mean? Like, you can't. Anyway, we got to end the show, but thank you so much, you guys. This was awesome. I mean, it was some tough content, some tough commentary, tough clips to get through, because it's just so disrespectful to our Christian faith, when we're dealing with, the likes of the Tuckers and stuff. But I am grateful. Excuse me. I am grateful for people like Chuck, who can come on and help us, get clarity and just really dig into these things, because it's hard to understand it in like a 15-minute video, or like a really, a short clip, or a 2-minute news segment. It's hard. So I really appreciate the longer conversations that we have now on Monday nights, because I couldn't do every day. I was trying to do like lives every day, just kicking my butt. But I do love you guys for watching and rocking with me. Thank you so much. Thank you for the super chats, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and sticking with us. We had almost 300 watchers tonight. So very, very nice. And I would love to go back and see the people that just came in and watch the whole time, or came in and maybe watched for a little bit and left. But we've had over 200 people watching consistently. So praise God for that.
Thank you for letting me come on. I'm gonna cut you off, because I know you probably would have got the last word. I just want to say thank you for letting me come on.
Absolutely.
I myself, I've been like with my own social media content. I've just really I can't say I haven't been motivated. I'm just like, you know what? I don't know, guys. I'm not gonna get into like personally, psychologically, some of the things that I've been thinking about and just processing, just how I want to go about managing that whole thing. But I'm glad that I get to come on your platform, Keisha, because as long as I can share my information with you and your audience, and I mean, I as far as my followers and getting them growing I don't care about growing followers and getting a big social media platform and monetize. I don't care about none of that stuff. Keisha, you do you be the big famous YouTuber, and everybody else out there, want to bring me on and have conversations, I'll come on your YouTube channel free of charge.
Well, we
I'm
can't
just
deny
sitting
the
there chilling.
people. They love you, Chuck. We can't deny the
Yeah,
people. So
so
yeah, you know.
I'm just saying, so guys, I got some content on my YouTube channel, some long form talk, but I
Yes, let
don't
me
post,
put
I don't
your
post,
link
I don't post a
again.
lot of content. I don't really
Or
have the
DT,
time
if you can, is DT still?
to
Yeah. Is he? If you can throw Chuck's link in there for me, please. And y'all go spam his chat with some gold hearts so he knows that y'all came from the Keisha King show,
It's
Monday
okay.
Night
But
Lights.
this is it though. This is as long as I can come on here, because I always have something to say. I just don't have time to say it. But as long as I
Yeah.
come on here, I'm good to go. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate you so much. I'm gonna drop your link one more time. Y'all, my allergies are acting like a whole mess tonight. But we made it through. We made it through. We persevered.
Yeah, I gotta jump off here, kid, because I ain't even ate dinner yet. So let me go
Oh
ahead.
my goodness. Well, there is the link, you guys. Thank you guys. Well, you can go ahead. I'll bring you down. But thank you, Chuck. See you later. Okay. But thank you guys so much for watching. Check out videos that I've done during the week, and I love you for watching. I will see you next time. Have a good night. Bye-bye.